Chapter 173. Snow-white waves rose from the sea like mountain peaks, accompanied by a deafening, thunderous roar, following which a figure passed through and cut them off. Chu Feng was like a savage flood dragon charging through the sea. He had a short period of peace after severing his third shackle, but now he was releasing all of his power to see just how powerful he was. That was because he would be going to war soon. Someone was leading an expedition to the east. How could he miss this opportunity? Hundreds and thousands of white waves rose up in this area, smashing into the sky like a tsunami. At Chu Feng's level, it could be considered world-shaking. For times the speed of sound was beyond people's imagination, and each time he would travel hundreds of meters. This was simply flying. Boom! Chu Feng stomped down with one foot. Faint golden energy surged out from his right foot, causing the entire sea to sink. It was as if the bottom of the sea was collapsing. It was a terrifying scene. As for the waves in all directions, they rose up abruptly like pillars of water, piercing through the clouds. Divine Feet was a tyrannical power. The faint golden energy emitted from his feet was extremely terrifying. Chu Feng had a feeling that he could kill a king-level entity with a single kick. Thump! Chu Feng landed on the beach and stomped down with both feet, causing the ground to split open. Golden sand surged into the sky like raging waves, and there were hundreds of them. A terrifying, pitch-black crater was left where he stood. With a swoosh, Chu Feng disappeared without a trace. He had caused too much of a ruckus, so it wasn't good for him to stay here for long. A large group of people ran over from afar. They were all dumbfounded after seeing the scene before them. They were absent-minded. This was too exaggerated. The golden beach had already turned into a deep valley, but where were the grains of sand? Oh God, what happened? Chu Feng had long since left and was now walking on another stretch of golden sand. He had already adapted to this powerful physique that had just undergone a transformation and was silently experiencing it. His entire body was sparkling and translucent, and each of his movements contained terrifying power. At the same time, he felt that his feet seemed to have become one with the ground as he stepped on it. It was as if his feet could absorb mysterious energy from the earth. A scarlet flying sword spun around him, giving rise to bursts of scarlet light. In the end, the flying sword's speed became faster, like a red mist pervading the air, enveloping the surroundings. At this moment, Chu Feng was in high spirits. His eyes shone brightly. His physical body had evolved in all aspects, and that naturally included a sharp increase in his mental energy. It could be seen that when Chu Feng used this mental power, the silver-white flame on his forehead was pulsating. His mental power was almost materialized like a god. Whoosh! The crimson sword flew out and reached a distance of 300 meters. Its attack range had increased. If he wanted to, he could go further, but this was the best attack range. The scarlet flying sword quickly spiraled around like a scarlet dragon soaring into the sky, riding on red lightning. It released an ear-piercing rumbling sound as it fiercely hacked down. Chi! The golden beach was split apart, revealing a terrifying ravine that was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. If this landed on a human's body, how could flesh and blood stop it? Chu Feng felt that if he were to fight against an ordinary beast king, this strike would be enough to split it in half. It would not be able to block this kind of sharpness. Both his physical body and spirit had undergone a transformation. He had made great progress, and his strength had increased greatly. Chu Feng was extremely satisfied. He was full of confidence for the upcoming battle. He was prepared to cut off the Eastern Punitive Expedition's retreat and start a massacre. Rumble! His stomach was growling. After such an intense evolution, he experienced an unbearable hunger that was similar to that time at the pilgrimage grounds. In fact, it was even more intense than that time. Today, he had severed 2 shackles and had evolved to a higher degree. This won't do. I really can't take it anymore. I need to rush into the city to fill my stomach. Perhaps it was because the exercise just now had stimulated this hunger, but it had suddenly erupted. He was so hungry that his heart was flustered. He began to run at full speed. In Jerusalem, many people had taken pictures of the 1,000-meter whale king. They were posted on the internet and caused quite a stir. This was because no whales had ever been seen here before. Today, they had discovered such a colossal creature. This was indeed big news. However, there were too many beast races rising up. Although this news attracted a lot of attention, it couldn't be considered a headline. Currently, all eyes were on the Black Dragon and the Arctic King's expedition to the east. The battle at Mount Kunlun was about to erupt. Some people were extremely interested in this giant whale. They were the ones who had once chased after Chu Feng, White Bear, Jonah, Avidus, and the others. They immediately recognized that this was the whale that had swallowed Chu Feng. Oh, who would have thought that the Whale King would swim all the way to Jerusalem? It just so happens that I'm about to go to the Holy City. Who's willing to go with me to take a look? Avidus asked. Schiller wanted to form an alliance with Jerusalem. Even someone as powerful as him was rather apprehensive of that place and wanted to send an envoy there to discuss some matters. I'll go with you, White Bear said. If you can find the Whale King along the way and convince it to join us, it'll be of great significance. Jonah smiled. The ocean was considered a forbidden zone for humans at present. It was very difficult to set foot in. The ocean was many times larger than the continent, and there were simply too many species. Some of them had even evolved to a terrifying level. Jonah's light golden hair danced in the wind. Her face was tender and beautiful, and her eyes were dark blue. She wore an enchanting smile as she said, "Riding the Whale King will allow us to search for Atlantis. We can also head east and conquer the immortal islands of the east." That's a good idea. Avidus also smiled. They suspected that the Whale King's lair might very well be in the vicinity of Jerusalem. That was because that was a holy city that held a fatal attraction for the beast race. Finally, Avidus represented Schiller on a diplomatic mission to Jerusalem. White Bear followed along. At this time, the war between the East and the West was about to begin. This side was in great need of manpower. Jonah, the Earth Dragon, and the others were ready to join the battle at any time and could not leave. In Jerusalem, Chu Feng was famished. He visited a restaurant and ate to his heart's content, frightening the waiter. His appetite was simply too great. Plates piled up, and the amount of food he ate was enough for dozens of people to enjoy. The waiter's eyes were wide open, and his hair stood on end. He felt as if he had encountered a beast king in human form. How could a normal human eat so much? In the end, even the restaurant manager was alarmed. He could only watch helplessly as plate after plate of food was emptied. He couldn't help but wipe off his cold sweat. Chu Feng himself was shocked. Just how strong was his digestion and absorption ability? So much food had been broken down and transformed into mysterious energy that was hidden within his flesh. In the end, even he felt embarrassed that he had eaten too much. However, he still felt hungry. Like a stream of water flowing into a desert, it was quickly absorbed. I need high-energy food. Chu Feng understood that ordinary food wouldn't have much effect on him. The evolution this time was extremely terrifying. He had severed 2 shackles, and his constitution had been greatly improved. All the cells in his body had become more active, and he needed to replenish an astonishing amount of energy. The so-called severed shackles explained everything. Previously, his body had been trapped and was in hibernation. Now that he had broken the cage and obtained freedom, he had truly awakened. Therefore, this was equivalent to experiencing a long period of starvation. He needed to replenish his energy. Chu Feng reluctantly put down his knife and fork. Although he was still hungry, he had no way to continue eating. Eating too much of this food wouldn't be effective. Last time, I ate a quasi-king level peacock at the pilgrimage grounds. Where am I going to find one now? When Chu Feng stood up, the restaurant manager treated him as if he were a play god and offered him a free meal. He only hoped that Chu Feng wouldn't come again. He viewed Chu Feng as a beast king who had just transformed. He hadn't expected to encounter such a problem. The feeling of hunger after the evolution was too severe. He wandered around the city and deeply felt the extraordinariness of the ancient city. An ancient wall lay in front of him. That was the Wailing Wall. It was suffused with a majestic energy and was one of the holy relics of Jerusalem. Not far away, a number of ancient palaces were emitting divine radiance. Chu Feng didn't approach. This city was too extraordinary. It was the holy land of the three religions. After the upheavals, everything here had changed. It was as if legends had reappeared. Some of the ancient ruins were glowing with divine radiance regardless of day or night. There were simply too many legends here. Even a Holy Sea's saint was buried here. His tomb was not far away. At this moment, the divine radiance was rushing towards the heavens. Even though the corpse had long since disappeared, it was still an astonishing sight. Chu Feng knew that this place was definitely protected by an enchantment. It was even more mysterious than the Vatican. He didn't want to barge in carelessly. Suddenly, he was shocked to see a little girl walking out from a nearby holy tomb. Her long hair was sparkling and translucent. Her face was like an angel's and her eyes were brilliant. She smiled sweetly at Chu Feng. Not many people dared to approach that area because it was suffused with divine power. However, she could enter and leave freely. The little girl was holding an ancient scripture and was softly reciting it. She walked into the most famous holy temple in front of her. There were layers upon layers of golden light, as if it was cast from gold. Ordinary people would bow down and worship that place. They didn't dare approach, but she walked in with light steps. Chu Feng was astonished. He guessed that if there were no accidents, there should be a peerless expert overseeing this place. However, the little girl wasn't berated or stopped. It was obvious that she was very familiar with this place and had a good relationship with the peerless experts of the holy city. Before long, the little girl appeared again. She walked towards Chu Feng and handed him a piece of food. It was dark and didn't look like much. Then, she waved her hand and disappeared into the sacred and ancient buildings with light footsteps. Chu Feng was baffled. He lowered his head and looked at the piece of black food. It looked like a pastry, but its appearance was terrible. Was this for him? He was moved and took a bite. After chewing a little, he swallowed. The taste wasn't that great, but it made him open his eyes wide in astonishment. His hunger was being alleviated. This piece of black food was indeed miraculous. It made him feel less hungry. In the end, Chu Feng felt that he was half full. It would be great if he could have 2 more pieces. Originally, he wanted to use the red crystal to nurture the seed in the stone box in hopes that it would sprout. But now, it seemed that he would have to postpone this for a while. Not only did he have to consolidate his strength after severing the shackles, but the hunger of his cells after breaking the confinement was also a big problem. This won't do. I need to kill my way to the west to find high-energy food. I can't delay any longer. Chu Feng muttered to himself. However, just as he was about to leave, he found that flights were a big problem. There was only one safe flight from Jerusalem to the west, and there was a shortage of flights. He needed to wait for a day or 2. Chu Feng endured and waited. They're here. On the evening of the second day, Chu Feng's eyes were as sharp as lightning. He immediately saw a Vidus and the white bear. He pretended to hide and turned to leave. Avidus's divine instincts were astonishing. He looked at the figure hiding in the crowd and whispered, "No way, he's still alive? Let's go and take a look." 2 beams of divine light shot out from Avidus's eyes. He and the white bear gave chase. Because they weren't too sure, they only took a quick glance. Chu Feng ran madly with his stomach growling. He wasn't afraid of the 2 people behind him. On the contrary, he couldn't help but wipe away his saliva. Chapter 174. Chu Feng resisted the urge to wipe the saliva off his face and ran all the way to the seaside. He couldn't hold it in any longer and wanted to turn around and kill the 2 king-level entities. The hunger in his stomach was unbearable, like a ball of fire burning inside him. It's really him? Avidus was tall and sturdy. His blue eyes shot out a divine light, and his face was full of astonishment. Wasn't that a dead man? The Vatican had already announced to the outside world that Chu Feng had touched a restriction and died in the sacred medicinal garden. Not even his bones were left. Everyone knew about this matter. Moreover, This news had caused quite a stir in the east because Chu Feng was quite famous there. Now that he had appeared again, Aviduz's tall body tensed up like a ferocious beast. He broke through the sound barrier and increased his speed to the limit as he chased after Chu Feng. This man had to die. He had to silence him. Otherwise, if Chu Feng appeared again, the Vatican would have a loophole in their story. They had already announced his death, but now he had appeared in Jerusalem. This would definitely cause a huge commotion and create a very bad influence. In front of him, Chu Feng also increased his speed and no longer hid. He broke through the sound barrier and fled into the distance. "Dear Chu, don't run. We won't hurt you. We can sit down and have a good talk. The Vatican welcomes you," Aviduz shouted, mentally with a smile on his face. His voice was very gentle, and those who didn't know the inside story would think that he was a very kind person. As for White Bear, he grinned, revealing his snow-white fangs. His body grew larger, and his snow-white fur glowed like silk as he madly ran away. "Chu, don't run. We mean you no harm." Aviduz was still communicating telepathically, but his expression was somewhat cold. He ran at supersonic speed, his light golden hair fluttering behind him. He was like a lion emitting a terrifying aura. Although he was saying good words, his killing intent had been triggered. He had to get rid of Chu Feng. He couldn't allow him to live and be exposed in front of the world. It's even better that he didn't die. I like the feeling of being torn apart. Slapping a king-level entity and turning it into a pulp is a great sense of accomplishment. The White Bear was extremely savage. He growled in a low voice, revealing his snow-white fangs. In front of him, the sea and the sky were the same color. The blue sea and the blue sky were connected together. It was extremely majestic. The golden beach was illuminated by the sun. The scorching heat hit him in the face, but it was not as hot as Chu Feng's heart. He came to a sudden stop. Chu Feng halted his steps and turned around to look at the two king-level entities. "Chu, I'm really happy to see you again. I thought you died in the belly of the Whale King, and I was very sad." Aviduz smiled with his white teeth. Chu Feng understood the other party's mentality. This was clearly a mocking expression. It looked very peaceful and even had a smile on it, but that was because it was looking down on him from the bottom of its heart. He didn't have a good impression of Aviduz. This person was too hypocritical. Back then, he had enthusiastically led him, Yellow Cattle, and the Black Yak to familiarize themselves with the divine city. In the end, he tore off all pretense and became hostile towards them. "Aviduz, do you think you can kill me?" Chu Feng looked at him calmly. Aviduz smiled. On the other hand, the White Bear was very malevolent. The teeth in its bloody mouth were like shiny knives, sharp and cold. They were filled with murderous aura and vigorous energy fluctuations. Its body was shining like a silver sun, pulsing with radiance. It coldly said, "Do you think you can continue living? A few days ago, I chased you like a stray dog. Today, I can still kill you easily. Chu, I forgot to tell you. I've severed my fourth shackle. This feeling is really good. I feel like I'm standing on the clouds, looking down on all life." Aviduz's golden hair danced in the wind. His body was emitting a divine radiance as he smiled confidently. "Me too," the White Bear said. He had a large body and exuberant blood energy. He stood up and looked down at Chu Feng with a tyrannical expression. "Don't tell me you've severed your second shackle? That's good. Otherwise, there's no point in tearing you apart. Oh, I forgot to tell you. We've also learned a breathing technique." The White Bear laughed arrogantly and coldly as he looked down at Chu Feng. As he saw it, it wasn't a big deal even if this human had also broken through. That was because their transformations were more intense. After obtaining the breathing technique, their strength had increased even more rapidly. It was enough to suppress Chu Feng. However, the White Bear discovered that Chu Feng wasn't the least bit afraid. On the contrary, he was staring at him and continuously wiping his mouth. The White Bear was startled. "What's wrong with this brat? Is he scared silly? Why is he making such strange movements?" "Chu, don't be afraid. Come, tell me, what exactly did you experience? How did you escape from the Whale King's stomach?" Aviduz smiled. He also felt that Chu Feng's actions were strange. He thought it was because he was nervous. Chu Feng swallowed a mouthful of saliva and wiped his mouth once again. Finally, they understood what he was doing. The white bear was startled. This brat was wiping his saliva? Following which, he flew into a rage because this Eastern youth was staring at him. He actually dared to do such a thing. He truly deserved death. No one had ever dared to show such an expression. Was he treating him as prey? Roar! The white bear was furious. This brat's eyes were too evil and incomparably passionate. He was staring at him with drool almost flowing out. How preposterous! At this point, there was no need for Chu Feng to hide anything anymore. With his back to the sea and the bright sun and blue sky above him, he stood on the golden beach and looked at the vigorous, fat bear. Everything was so beautiful. Should he braise or steam? His saliva dripped profusely. He could finally solve his unbearable hunger problem. Roar! The white bear couldn't stand that kind of gaze and immediately took action. Its bare paw was even larger than a millstone as it slapped towards Chu Feng. With a loud boom, the beach collapsed and the calm sea was shaken into waves tens of meters high. This white bear was extremely ferocious and wanted to kill as soon as it arrived. It had been infuriated by Chu Feng's expression because no one had ever dared to see it as prey. It slapped continuously, destroying the beach, causing the sea to boil and the waves to rush into the sky. This was an astonishing scene. However, it couldn't touch Chu Feng at all. The other party's movements were too fast and dazzling. Beside him, Avidus was retreating. He felt a chill run down his spine because the speed was too terrifying. It was much faster than him and the white bear. Chu Feng wasn't in a hurry to take action. Instead, he was adapting to his current state. He was very satisfied and finally attacked with a punch. The white bear immediately let out a loud cry. It couldn't block the fist seal and was drowned in a terrifying light. With a bang, it was sent flying with blood flowing out of its mouth and nose. Roar! The white bear was both shocked and angry. At the same time, he felt his hair stand on end. The power of that punch was too great. Avidus saw everything clearly and felt his hair stand on end. He already understood that Chu Feng's current strength was terrifying and gave him a very bad feeling. Chu, what level have you reached? He couldn't help but ask. Chu Feng raised 3 fingers. His stomach was growling even louder as he closed in on the white bear. Impossible. You've only opened 1 shackle before. How can you open 2 shackles in a few days? You need time. The white bear couldn't believe it. At the same time, its claws became even more resplendent. It activated the mysterious energy within its body to fight with all its might. Chu Feng's expression was solemn as he warned, "Don't randomly wave those bear paws around. They're my ingredients." Roar! The white bear was extremely furious. Chu Feng was looking down on him too much. Just a moment ago, he was still looking down on this human brat. But now, it was as if their statuses had been reversed. The white bear unleashed a divine ability. Its palms glowed as it slapped towards Chu Feng. However, Chu Feng didn't pay any attention to it. With a swoosh, he rushed out to intercept Avidus. Avidus' armor was glowing. He actually didn't participate in the battle and instead turned around to escape. He was very decisive. He fled as soon as he saw that the situation wasn't right. Boom! The air exploded as Chu Feng caught up to him at 4 times the speed of sound and blocked his path. Chu, I mean you no harm. You've misunderstood. Avidus revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. He had never imagined that he would encounter such a situation during his diplomatic mission to Jerusalem. After accidentally discovering Chu Feng, he wanted to silence him and help the Vatican eliminate the hidden danger. Now, it seemed that he was simply courting death. Chu Feng didn't say much and directly punched out. Avidus' golden hair danced in the wind and his eyes were sharp. He had also made up his mind. Since he couldn't avoid it, he would fight. However, the next moment, he felt a piercing pain. His palm felt as if it had been broken after colliding with the opponent's fist. His palm was full of cracks and blood was flowing out. This shocked him. The opponent's strength was too tyrannical. Chu Feng didn't hold back at all. He circulated his special breathing technique and unleashed the demon ox fist to attack. With a clang, Avidus drew a large, snow-white sword and slashed at Chu Feng. This sword was of extremely high quality and was far superior to the silver blade Chu Feng had broken with his black dagger. Clang! 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 Chu Feng formed a fist seal and struck the back of the sword, causing it to buzz. This shocked Avidus because he found that there were cracks on the sword. He slashed horizontally and vertically, frantically activating the radiant sword art. However, he couldn't do anything to this demon king Chu. Thump! Chu Feng pierced through the sword radiance and landed a punch on Avidus' body. In the blink of an eye, the shining radiant armor on Avidus' body exploded with a bang and completely disintegrated. There was simply no way to block Chu Feng's attack. The so-called protective armor turned into scrap metal under his fist seal. This was a type of superalloy that was excessively hard, but it still wasn't enough. Avidus was sent flying and spat out large mouthfuls of blood. There was a bloody hole in his chest that went straight through his front and back. How can you be so strong? Avidus was unwilling to accept this. He had severed one more shackle than Chu Feng, but he was still not the latter's match. Chu Feng ignored him and shot out his red flying knife. With a puff, he cut off Avidus' head, completely eliminating any chance of survival. In the distance, the white bear was running wildly. He wanted to escape from this beach and that terrifying demon King Chu. However, how could he escape at a speed close to 4 times the speed of sound? In the blink of an eye, Chu Feng had caught up to him. The white bear had lost all hope and turned around to engage in close-quarters combat. His whole body was glowing as he spat out a snow-white cold air. With a whoosh, the entire beach was covered in ice. This was his ability. However, this cold air, which was enough to kill him and the others, was ineffective against Chu Feng. He easily dispersed it and, with a single step, arrived before the bear and engaged in a fierce battle. Without any suspense, the white bear was killed and its corpse lay on the ground. Chu Feng carried the bear's huge body and returned to the previous location. Following that, he began to cut up the white bear and prepare it. An uninhabited seaside villa became the best place for him to wash the bear's meat. Finally, flames danced on the golden beach as Chu Feng used Avidus' cracked greatsword to pierce through the translucent bear meat and began to roast it. His stomach was rumbling nonstop. After waiting for a long time, it was finally time to enjoy. In the following period of time, Chu Feng ate heartily like a tornado sweeping away the clouds. His body was like a bottomless pit as he ate a lot. The king-level meat was transformed into powerful energy and stored within his body. Chu Feng's whole body was glowing, and the more he ate, the more radiant he became. I can't waste the bear's paw. If he roasted it, it would be a reckless waste of resources. In the end, he hesitated for a moment before entering the city with the bear's paw. He arrived at the restaurant he had visited before, scaring the manager so much that his hair stood on end. Chu Feng smiled at him and asked for his help in cooking the bear's paw. He told the manager that he would not disturb him in the future. Following that, he took some seasonings and borrowed the manager's communicator. Once again arriving at the seaside, Chu Feng leisurely roasted the meat and even took pictures. Finally, Chu Feng was full and completely satisfied. Essence energy gushed out from all the pores on his body, and a vigorous power surged through his body. His hunger had finally disappeared, and all his cells became highly active. They emitted a translucent luster and hid a terrifying power. Chu Feng felt that his condition was better than ever. At night, he returned to the holy city and went straight to the restaurant. After a night of stewing, the bear's paw had already been prepared and became a delicacy. This was Chu Feng's breakfast, the Bear King's paw. He ate it comfortably and was in a good mood. On the same day, Chu Feng left and boarded a plane bound for Europe. He only arrived safely after flying for more than a day. At this time, the Eastern Punitive Expedition had already exchanged blows with the creatures of Kunlun. Although it was only a probing battle, both sides had already suffered casualties. After arriving safely, Chu Feng immediately posted a few pictures on the internet. He did not post them on a social media platform, but rather posted them on the internet. What is this? Oh my God, such a huge white bear lying on the beach. It has been killed. Following that, the most shocking news was that someone was roasting the bear's meat. It was golden and glossy and looked incomparably delicious. Moreover, he was using a large sword as an iron rod to pierce through the meat. Unfortunately, there was only one arm of the person roasting the meat in the photo. The style was crude and extremely valiant. The photos were circulated and eventually seen by a few experts. This was simply an earthquake. Oh my God, that's the white bear king. It has been roasted and eaten. This caused a huge uproar, and everyone could no longer sit still. That was an extremely powerful beast king, yet it had died just like that and been roasted into a golden meal. This was simply unimaginable. Wait a moment, that sword. Some people looked carefully and saw that the Holy See-style sword was engraved with a single name, Avidus. This caused a huge earthquake in the Western world. The white bear and Avidus had actually met with mishaps at the same time. Everyone was dumbfounded. Those were two powerful experts, yet one had been turned into food and the other's weapon had been turned into cutlery. This kind of shock was too great. Oh my God, there's actually such a fierce person. Too valiant. Who did this? This also caused a huge commotion in the East. Eastern Punitive Expedition. Do you see this? This is a warning to you. You still want to encroach on Mount Kunlun. Chapter 175. It was as if an earthquake had struck the East and the West. This incident caused a huge uproar. Even the Eastern Punitive Expedition was alarmed. Some of the king-level experts began to worry. Who was the culprit? It was somewhat frightening. That was the white bear they were talking about, but someone had actually roasted him golden and eaten him. At the crucial moment, the black dragon stood out to calm his troops. Don't be afraid. Kunlun is finished this time. We have powerful reinforcements. It won't be long before the Alliance members arrive. The home of myriad gods will soon have a new owner. He was full of confidence. This kind of declaration calmed the Eastern Punitive Expedition. To the east, this was a very bad sign. After the news spread, both Kunlun and the other major powers were bewildered. The enemy still had powerful reinforcements. It can be confirmed that the white bear and Avidus met with mishap on the southeastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea outside Jerusalem. Many people were shocked when they heard the news. Some people compared the photos to the background and confirmed that the incident had happened on the coast outside the holy city of Jerusalem. Many in the Eastern Punitive Expedition were relieved. If it didn't happen at their rear, then it wasn't too bad. Many people in the East also understood. No wonder the holy city was so valiant. Everything made sense when they thought about it. There must be a peerless expert overseeing it. If Avidus and the white bear had offended someone there, then they would have died in vain. In the eyes of some, even the Arctic King and Schiller would not dare to question them. Who would dare to casually start a war in the holy land of the three religions? I knew it. Only the people of the holy city could be so bold and domineering. They didn't even put the holy see in their eyes. They killed and ate what they deserved. Both the East and the West were discussing this matter. The holy city was becoming more and more mysterious. Ordinary powers would not dare to do such a thing. Roasting and eating them without a word was too unrestrained and unrestrained. In the Vatican, Schiller frowned. This was not good news. He had wanted to cooperate with Jerusalem, but who would have thought that the emissary would be killed? The sun shone brightly in the clear blue sky. Chu Feng was enjoying the warmth of the sun as he walked through the forest. He had already buried the bee skin bag and was feeling relaxed. Right now, he needed to consolidate his strength. This time, his physique had improved greatly. The evolution was too fast. I'm back. Chu Feng was in Greece. He did not take action immediately. Instead, he entered the nearest clean and tidy city. He wanted to stay for a short while and understand the current situation in detail. Athens, the capital of Greece, was known as the cradle of Western civilization. Its written history spanned thousands of years. After days of fleeing and wandering between life and death, Chu Feng finally heaved a sigh of relief. However, he knew that he couldn't stop because the situation was very tense. Kunlun was fighting against the Eastern Punitive Expedition, and he had to do his best. Where should I start? He pondered carefully. Should he first cut off the main road connecting the East and West and cause panic among the Eastern Punitive Expedition, or should he first wreak havoc in the rear? Where were the lairs of the Black Dragon and the Arctic King? Now that the two of them were leading an expedition to the east, their tribe must be incomparably empty. Chu Feng was prepared to destroy their nest. Although they were terrifying experts with 6 severed shackles and possessed frightening strength, they still possessed emotions and desires. Destroying their lair was enough to disturb their mental state. It would be perfect if they were killed by the peerless experts of the East because of their unstable emotions. In truth, the ones he wanted to get rid of the most were those from the Vatican. However, Schiller was simply too terrifying. With a peerless expert overseeing the place, who would dare to carelessly set foot there? The tragedy in the sacred medicinal garden was caused by his bare hands. How I wish I could overturn Schiller's divine city. Chu Feng muttered to himself. Very soon, Chu Feng understood the current situation. A series of major events had taken place today, shaking both the East and the West. The repercussions were profound and far-reaching. In Africa, the Elder Lion King had accepted the Black Dragon's invitation and was about to set off for Kunlun. The Elder Lion King was about to set off like a terrifying tsunami. That was because he was already near invincible 21 years ago. Everyone who knew about the great upheavals knew of him. Later on, the Indian yoga guru Famlin had accepted the invitation and was about to set off for Kunlun. He claimed that he had seen the Brahma in his dreams and had comprehended the supreme truths. He needed to ascend to Kunlun to verify them. Following which, within an ancient castle in England, an old man with a head full of golden hair and snow-white skin announced that he would set off for Kunlun and flatten the home of myriad gods. His words were quite tyrannical and undisguised. He was going to participate in the Eastern Punitive Expedition against Kunlun. This caused a huge commotion because he was a terrifying king who had awakened and evolved from human. He had already become a king 21 years ago, and some even called him the Vampire King. He loved to devour spiritual blood. Anyone who was targeted by him would feel their scalp go numb. Moreover, he was not going to set off alone. He was going to lead an army. After the news spread, both the East and the West were shaken. This series of events caused everyone to feel fear. This was equivalent to the most terrifying group of experts from all over the world joining forces to invade Kunlun. The morale of the Eastern Punitive Expedition soared. How could Mount Kunlun resist the arrival of such peerless experts? It would certainly be flattened. They could already imagine the scene of the divine mountain being breached. At that time, all kinds of sacred trees and mutant fruits would become their possessions. This group of bastards has formed an allied army to invade Kunlun. How despicable! Many people in the East were furious. It was obvious that these experts were envious of the divine land of the East. They wanted to join forces to conquer it and use it as the foundation for their future evolution. Everyone knew that following the recovery of the heaven and earth, all kinds of ancient divine trees would grow on Kunlun in the future. It could even be considered an immortal land that would allow the kings of all races to evolve continuously. Currently, Kunlun had yet to reach that step, but the outside world could no longer sit still. They were all plotting and preparing to invade. The East cannot calm down. A violent storm was about to arrive, and before long, a decisive battle would unfold at Kunlun. How shocking. I think Mount Kunlun is finished. It's destined to change owners. Some people in the West were discussing. Not necessarily. There are also peerless experts overseeing that side. They won't sit by and watch as the other parties join forces to swallow Kunlun. There will definitely be other major powers there to support them. There are naturally experts in the East as well. The roaming Jade Temple Master had already set out for Mount Kunlun. If not for fear of the beast stirring up trouble, The 8 Visions Temple Masters and Hollow Jade Temple Masters would also head west. In addition, the White Crane of Mount Shu, the Grand Master of Mount Wudong, and the Elder Ape of the Great Woods Temple had also declared that Mount Kunlun belonged to the divine land of the East. No invaders would be allowed to set foot on it. Moreover, some people were secretly making their moves. It wasn't that the great demons of Kunlun didn't have any friends. It was just that they weren't that high profile. A violent storm was about to arrive. Oh, experts of Mount Kunlun, have you still not realized? This is a general trend that cannot be stopped. Kunlun is not your Kunlun. It belongs to all of us. If I were you, I would welcome the Eastern Punitive Expedition with open arms. The Arctic King spoke from afar. His voice shook the heaven and earth, angering the experts of Mount Kunlun. This was intolerable bullying. A great battle was about to erupt. Everyone was waiting for their experts to arrive. The situation is actually this bad. It's already worsening. Chu Feng sighed. After understanding the current situation, he frowned. No wonder the Black Dragon and the Arctic King were so fearless. They had contacted the Elder Lion King, the ancient Yoga Master Fanlin, and the Vampire King. Chu Feng felt the gravity of the situation. This kind of alliance would cause an astonishing amount of destruction once it erupted. It might even attract experts with 6 severed shackles from all over the world to rush over and take a share of the spoils. At the Vatican, Schiller was smiling warmly. The current situation was extremely advantageous to the Eastern Punitive Expedition. A terrifying, devouring vortex was forming. If a great battle were to erupt at Mount Kunlun, it might even attract some peerless experts. The combined strength of all parties would form a terrifying resonance that would annihilate the home of myriad gods. Finally, he prepared to move out. He was not going to the east, but to the Black Dragon's lair to help him hold down the fort. Everyone knows that Master is overseeing the Vatican. No one dares to offend him. If anyone dares to cause trouble, they will definitely go to the Black Dragon's or the Arctic King's lair. A young lady in white smiled. She was beautiful and holy, and her whole body was emitting a holy radiance. The Arctic King came from the North Pole, a world of ice and snow. His lair was extremely well hidden and difficult for ordinary people to find. The Black Dragon's lair was on the European side. If one searched carefully, they would be able to find it. Schiller's injuries had long since healed. Although he was an old man, he was now emitting a vigorous aura of life. His eyes were clear and calm. Soon after, he set out to catch a big fish. With such a major incident, the East and the West are about to engage in a decisive battle. If I were to raid the Black Dragon's lair, it would be too insignificant. There would be no way to deal any serious damage to them, and the impact wouldn't be too great either. I have to make them panic and even fear me. Chu Feng muttered to himself as he overturned his original plan. After careful research, he found a few reliable targets and immediately set out because the situation was too urgent. He did not travel far and remained in Greece, secretly approaching the European missile base. In the Black Yak's words, he was preparing to do something big. Last time, you guys used a nuclear missile to shoot me down from a plane. Did you feel good about it? Chu Feng sneered. That was the result of Schiller's influence. Now, he was prepared to return the favor. If he was going to do it, then he would do it in an earth-shattering manner. That day, Chu Feng used his king-level strength to stealthily sneak over and successfully found the person in charge of the military here. He then hypnotized him. Now that he had severed 3 shackles and was practicing the imperial sword technique, his spiritual power was naturally exceptionally strong. Hypnosis was as easy as flipping his hand. Everything went smoothly. There were actually nuclear missiles here, and not just one at that. Very well, the target is the Vatican. Schiller, I'm going to set off a big firecracker for you. The monk could run, but the temple couldn't. Now, he was going to give them a taste of their own medicine and set off a firework in Europe for Schiller, the Black Dragon, and the Arctic King to see. Not long ago, he had almost died in the West. Today, Chu Feng wanted to demand an explanation and collect a portion of the interest. Chapter 176. Launching a nuclear weapon requires 3 parts of the password. Chu Feng was dumbfounded. He had no idea this was the case. The person in charge of the military only knew 1 part of the password. In order to launch a nuclear weapon, the other 2 parts were required. The procedure was extremely strict and complicated. Fortunately, the password to the missile base could be obtained from Athens. The upper echelons of Europe had given the Greeks a great deal of authority over this matter. Chu Feng made the trip. Although it was quite troublesome, it was finally done. Prepare to fire the firecrackers. Chu Feng was about to return the favor. He felt that it would be best if he could wipe the entire divine city and the sacred medicinal garden off the face of the earth. He once again tried to contact the yellow cattle and the black yak. He had tried many times in the past 2 days, but to no avail. He had fainted for several days after eating a single flower bud. The 2 oxen ate 2 flowers each and did not appear again after denouncing the Vatican. He guessed that they were in the midst of an intense evolution. This time, he was still unable to contact them. Chu Feng was quite regretful. He had wanted to let the 2 oxen rejoice before anyone else found out. There are quite a lot of nuclear weapons here. After the upheavals, king-level entities had massacred cities one after another. Therefore, the Europeans had made ample preparations to defend against these savage beast kings. Fire! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. This was not a single nuclear missile, but a dozen or so. They flew out one after the other, and their target was the Vatican. Schiller was currently occupying the Holy See's divine city and sacred medicinal garden. At this rate, he would definitely evolve into one of the most powerful beings in the world. Now, Chu Feng had destroyed his foundation. The missiles were not intercepted at all. Later on, it was discovered by someone. The astonishing scene captured by satellite shocked some people in Europe. Many members of parliament jumped in shock. God, what happened? Who gave the order? Stop it. The high-ranking officials who had ordered Chu Feng to be shot down under Schiller's influence felt their hair stand on end. That was because the target this time was Schiller's divine city. If it were to land, it would be enough to flatten the city hundreds of times over. Oh God, it's too late. That mythical land will soon disappear from the face of the earth. Some of the Western counselors were panicking. This was definitely a major incident. Who had given the order? Boom, boom, boom. On this day, a shocking mushroom cloud rose in the west, shocking the entire world. Heavens, what happened in the west? Nuclear explosions, mushroom clouds after mushroom clouds, covering the Vatican. When news got out, the entire world was shaken. This made everyone feel like they were going crazy. More than 10 nuclear missiles were all fired at a single place. Everyone felt like they were in a dream. This was too unrealistic. Even if it was a world war, there was no need to be so extravagant and wasteful. This was not just 1 or 2 missiles, but an entire group of nuclear missiles. This thing was actually measured by a group, so one could see how serious it was. It was enough to scare people to death. The entire Apennine Peninsula where the Holy See's divine city was located was shaking, and blazing light rushed into the sky. The commotion was too big, and it couldn't be hidden at all. People did not know the cause, nor did they know the result. They only saw the horrifying process. Soon, all kinds of photos of the mushroom cloud flooded the internet. Everyone in the world was stunned. That firecracker must have been very beautiful. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it. Chu Feng muttered to himself. He was waiting for the result. How could so many nuclear missiles not destroy the divine city? Everyone in the world wanted to know the reason behind such a destructive weapon. Could it be that the West was dissatisfied with the Vatican and had decided to act against it? Some Western parliamentarians immediately refuted the rumor, saying that it had nothing to do with them. Someone had fired nuclear missiles without permission, and they expressed their strong condemnation and indignation. Everyone was dumbfounded. If it wasn't them, then who was it? The East and the West were in an uproar. The major corporations all had their own ideas. They immediately guessed that someone was taking revenge on the Vatican. Even though the Vatican blamed Chu Feng and the 2 oxen for triggering the restrictive spell and causing the massacre of king-level entities, everyone had their own conclusions. Especially after the Black Dragon and the Arctic King led their armies on an expedition to the east, everyone had their own conclusions. What a great explosion! How delightful! It's best if we send Schiller to hell and never let him appear again. Some people in the east were clapping excitedly. Who had done this? How audacious! The eyes of the entire world were focused on the Vatican. Everyone wanted to know the final outcome. Xu Feng was also guessing what had happened there. In the post-civilization era, there was no need to doubt the power of nuclear weapons. Under normal circumstances, it was enough to flatten an entire area. Even king-level entities could only rely on their divine instincts to evade and advance. If they were to be at the center of the explosion, the temperature would reach hundreds of millions of degrees, and they would be completely vaporized. Back then, the ash wolf was able to survive because it had relied on its divine instincts to escape to the periphery of the explosion. Moreover, there was a crack in the ground that led to the depths of the earth. Even so, it had lost half its body. Xu Feng and the yellow cattle were only able to survive last time because they had used their divine instincts to avoid danger. I jumped off the plane. Otherwise, they would have been reduced to ashes. Now, the divine city was right there and couldn't be moved. Xu Feng didn't believe that it could remain unscathed. When a mushroom cloud dissipated and the dust settled, the entire area could be seen. The images captured by satellites showed the current state of the Vatican. Everyone drew in a breath of cold air. There was a city there that was emitting a faint light. It was actually still there and hadn't been erased. Around it, the vast primitive forests had all disappeared and turned into a wasteland. Not even a blade of grass could be seen. The scene was extremely terrifying. It's still there. Xu Feng's eyes shot out a divine radiance as he clenched his fists. He was somewhat unwilling to accept this. However, he also discovered that something was amiss. The divine city was still there, but it was in ruins. It wasn't that it didn't suffer any losses. Many ancient buildings had collapsed, and some places had even been turned into ruins by the bombardment. The reason it could survive was because there was a divine energy pervading the air and forming a screen of light that protected the entire ancient city. However, it had been too long, and the world had only just recovered. That divine energy was far from being comparable to the past, so it wasn't able to completely defend the city. Moreover, the recovery energy had almost been used up. The Holy Medicinal Garden was also in a similar state. Some of the missiles had passed through the defensive zone of the divine city and landed in the garden, leaving it in ruins. The entire world fell into a momentary silence. Just how terrifying of a place was this? Even with so many nuclear missiles, they had not been able to completely destroy it, suppressing the various major factions. As expected of a religion that once produced a saint, someone sighed. This place was truly awe-inspiring. It was a holy land shrouded in myths and legends. The Western world was shaken. All kinds of voices rang out at the same time, and in the end, it was an uproar. In the East, many people felt that it was a great pity. Schiller was a source of calamity. They should have wiped him out, but in the end, all their efforts were in vain. Fire, Xu Feng muttered as he made his final attempt. There were still 5 nuclear missiles that he hadn't used because he was afraid that they would be too packed together. It would be difficult for them to display their greatest effect. The reason he had so many was because he had prepared them to prevent the Beast Kings from massacring cities after the upheavals. Some of the important military bases in Europe had enough of them. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 5 missiles were like divine swords as they soared into the sky and flew toward the Apennine Peninsula. Their target was still the Vatican. Although the satellites had captured the trajectories of the 5 missiles, the relevant personnel had long since become distracted and didn't pay much attention. It would be difficult to intercept them under normal circumstances, let alone now. At this time, the entire world was in an uproar. Everyone's attention was focused on the Vatican, discussing what had happened and guessing who had done it. In the end, the 5 missiles flew toward the Holy Church's medicinal garden and the divine city. Boom! When a mushroom valley soared into the sky once again, the whole world fell silent. 5 clouds rose in succession in this mythical land, and intense explosions occurred. This time, people were truly frightened. one after another, wave after wave. Just who was this ruthless person? He would not rest until the Vatican was flattened. The Western parliamentarians who had been stomping their feet earlier felt their scalps go numb. They didn't dare to protest or even make a sound because they were all scared stiff. This ruthless fellow had instilled fear in them. They couldn't afford to provoke such an ancestor who would explode at the slightest disagreement. They reckoned that the Holy Church wouldn't be able to keep their city this time. This also meant that Schiller's hopes of becoming an invincible expert were about to be dashed. When the smoke and dust settled and the mushroom cloud disappeared, people saw the current state of the Vatican and were all at a loss for words. The entire divine city had been flattened. Apart from a majestic cathedral, all the other buildings had been reduced to rubble. The entire place was in ruins with rubble everywhere. This time, the last of the divine power in the city had been completely used up. From now on, there would be no more defenses. As for the medicinal garden, it was in an even worse state. Who knew how many zhang into the ground had been shaved off, turning it into scorched earth? There were radioactive substances everywhere, and all signs of life had disappeared. The revived divine trees had all been beaten back to their original state. They retreated into the barrier deep underground and would not be able to sprout again in a short period of time. It could be said that this ancient land had been completely flattened. On this day, someone near the Black Dragon's lair heard Schiller's furious roar. It was extremely terrifying, like the wailing of a demonic god, shaking the earth. Schiller only regained his composure after a long while. He muttered to himself, "There are so many famous mountains and immortal islands in the world. There are also Penglai, Kunlun, Atlantis, and so on. My path will not be cut off." On the same day, in a dilapidated cathedral in the west, an old man opened his eyes and shot out 2 beams of golden light. He whispered, "The path has deviated. The Vatican has returned to the right path." The Western world was in an uproar like a tsunami. Everyone could no longer sit still, and all levels of society were engaged in heated discussions. What had happened today was too terrifying. The illustrious Vatican, even the legendary divine city of the Holy See, had been flattened. People were no longer in the mood to work or play games. They were all discussing who had done this. This was even more frightening than a grade 18 tornado. The East was in an even greater uproar. People from all walks of life were discussing which ruthless person had taken action. Many people were excited. Such a powerful attack would surely deal a heavy blow to those ambitious people who had come to the East. They had mustered such a large force, but in the end, something big had happened. The Eastern punitive expedition was indeed shaken, and many people were deeply uneasy. This was too frightening. Today, the Vatican had been flattened. Tomorrow, it was entirely possible that their headquarters would be destroyed. How delightful. Who did this? This can be considered revenge for my brother. Chu Feng, you died such a miserable death. You died too early. The Black Yak's evolution had ended, and he had woken up. He was laughing nonstop, but he was also somewhat sad. He regretted that Chu Feng had died in the West. Very soon, Yellow Cattle had also woken up. Many people were speculating about the identity of the ruthless person, but very few would associate it with Chu Feng. After all, he was already dead. However, there were also exceptions, such as Hu Sheng. He was still in Shuntian, having a small gathering with Xiong Kuan, Lu Qing, and a few other beast race members. Today, he had become less talkative. "Fox, what's up with you again? Look at the firecrackers in the west today. How delightful. You should laugh a little." Xiong Kuan laughed loudly. They hated the Eastern punitive expedition very much. Those ambitious people wanted to dip their fingers into Mount Kunlun. This caused many people in the East to view them as enemies, including some beast race members. "Yes, Hu Sheng, what's up with you? You don't like to talk anymore." Someone beside him patted his shoulder. "I feel that this ruthless person style is somewhat familiar." "I'm not unfamiliar with him." Hu Sheng whispered. "What? You have a clue? Who does he look like?" Xiong Kuan's eyes widened as he asked in a low voice. On the shore of the eastern sea, Linoy's long dress fluttered in the wind. She gazed at the boundless eastern sea, slightly lost in thought. She was also guessing. In the west, the whole world seemed to be in an earthquake. The commotion this time was simply too great. Without a doubt, the Eastern Punitive Expedition's morale was at an all-time low. Even the Black Dragon and the Arctic King's attempts to boost their morale had little effect. Only when a peerless expert declared that he would continue the Eastern Punitive Expedition did they regain their spirits. The Elder Lion King had announced that he would soon set foot on the main peak of Mount Kunlun. This declaration from a near-invincible expert 21 years ago was somewhat shocking. He had made up his mind to attack Mount Kunlun and would not be affected by this incident. Moreover, the Elder Lion King had said that the Golden Lion King was already on his way. Oh, the home of myriad gods in the east is too tempting for us. I understand the Elder Lion King's feelings. We need to go there to transform. Within an ancient castle, the Vampire King nodded. He looked like a gentleman with his long golden hair dancing in the wind. His face was as white as snow, and his eyes were deep. On this day, he also declared his support for the Eastern Punitive Expedition. He also announced that his descendants were already on their way, and that he would also hurry over after refining a secret treasure from the blood race. The Indian yoga guru Fanlin was also resolute and did not give up. He was even more direct and had long since embarked on his journey. He announced that it was Brahma who was guiding him forward, and that he would go to the home of myriad gods to receive the gods back. When Chu Feng received the news, he disregarded the clamor of the outside world and set off with a radiant smile. He headed towards the secret passage leading to the east. He was prepared to wait there and kill the Golden Lion King and those little vampires. Chapter 177. Fine, lustrous raindrops drifted down, moistening the soil and washing the dark green leaves. The smell of soil and grass wafted through the air. Chu Feng didn't mind the rain falling on him. He walked alone on the road outside the small town. His steps didn't seem fast, but each time he took a step, he would disappear from his original position and reappear dozens of meters away. He wasn't exerting his full strength and was simply hurrying along. This was the extraordinary part of the divine feat. It was comparable to the legendary earth shrinking technique and was almost a divine ability. Perhaps it was because he had severed 2 shackles in succession that his feet gained the same ability and finally formed the divine feat. This caused Chu Feng to rejoice. He was hurrying towards that mysterious valley passage. With this type of divine ability, even if he encountered danger, he wouldn't feel any fear and could calmly retreat. Chu Feng believed that his current speed was probably not inferior to experts with 6 severed shackles. However, king-level entities had a common weakness in terms of speed. They couldn't maintain it for long periods of time. It would be terrifying if they could maintain their peak condition. Finally, Chu Feng approached the area. The rain stopped, and the blazing sun jumped out, scattering the rain and clouds. Golden radiance illuminated the world. I should have arrived before them. Chu Feng muttered to himself. He was originally in Greece and had rushed over as soon as he could, so he should have arrived before the others. The weather changed very quickly. Before long, the dampness brought about by the rain had completely disappeared. The scorching sun shone brightly above his head. As Chu Feng neared his destination, he plucked a glistening yellow fruit from the roadside. Its fragrance assailed his nostrils as he walked leisurely. No matter how clamorous the outside world was, he was as steady as Mount Tai. He didn't pay attention to the heated discussions on the internet about missiles flattening the Holy Sea's divine city. Chu Feng tossed the fruit away and stared at the misty area in front of him. Were there really people guarding this place? He quietly walked over and sealed off his aura. Within the canyon, there were lounge chairs, red wine, vodka, and all kinds of food. There were also 2 king-level entities. It was a rather relaxed and carefree atmosphere. It was very comfortable for them to guard this place. They ate and drank to kill time. With cigars in their mouths, they had completely adapted to the various customs and enjoyments of human society. Dilong, who do you think did what happened in the Vatican? How brazen and audacious. They actually destroyed Master Schiller's divine city. It was said that the Black Dragon and the Arctic King were also unbearably angry. They swore that they would find the culprit and hang him. They had high hopes for the sacred medicinal garden, but now, all hope was gone. Right now, we can only advance and not retreat. We must take down Kunlun. This was a gray-haired, middle-aged man who was leaning against a reclining chair. His eyes were bright and full of expression. He drank a mouthful of strong alcohol and seemed to be thinking about something. Not far away, there was a black earth dragon with black light flowing all over its body. It had evolved from a lizard and had dragon horns on its head, but it had no wings. It was only one step away from evolving into a Western dragon. However, its current strength was already sufficient. It had long since severed the third shackle in its body. The black earth dragon spoke. The person who did this must be a madman. This kind of person won't be able to jump around for long. He will show himself sooner or later. At that time, what awaits him will be the boundless fury of those kings with 6 severed shackles. Will he be able to live? The gray-haired man nodded and did not bring up this matter again. They had been discussing and pondering for a long time. He was very excited when he mentioned the Elder Lion King, the Vampire King, and the ancient Yoga Master Fanlin. With these 3 peerless experts on their expedition, they would definitely conquer Kunlun. At the same time, he was also complaining about how boring it was to guard the rear. When the time came to split the spoils of war, they probably wouldn't get any. This won't do. When the time comes, those 3 experts will descend upon Kunlun. We must kill our way over and plunder the Divine Mountain. He believed that with the Elder Lion King, Fanlin, and the Black Dragon attacking together, they would be able to destroy the home of myriad gods. They would not be in any danger if they follow behind. That's right, it's too boring to stay in this godforsaken place. We should also join the battle and get a share. The Black Earth Dragon squinted his eyes, which flickered with a cold glint. Do you think this expedition is similar to an ancient incident? Before the post-civilization era, the 8-nation alliance attacked the East, the gray-haired man asked. Somewhat similar, but the benefits this time are too great. If we can really conquer the home of myriad gods, the Black Dragon and the others will ascend to the peak and become invincible existences. We will then be second only to them. The Black Earth Dragon's emotions were fluctuating. His eyes shone with a profound light. He was somewhat excited. Soon after, the 2 of them began to contact others in earnest. They wanted to switch defenses and strongly expressed their desire to participate in the siege of Mount Kunlun. It's already been agreed. In 2 days, someone will come to switch defenses. At that time, the Golden Lion King and the Vampire King will also be arriving. We can go with them and begin the expedition, the gray-haired man said. Chufeng walked out with a gloomy expression. These 2 king-level entities were truly insolent. They were comparing this expedition to the 8-nation alliance in ancient times and treating it as a great opportunity. He appeared without a sound, passed through the mist, and arrived in front of the 2. Plop clang! The gray-haired man and the Black Earth Dragon caused a huge ruckus. They knocked over a deck chair and kicked over a barrel of wine. They were truly frightened out of their wits. How could a dead man appear alive again? That day, they Avidus, White Bear, and Jonah had chased after Chufeng and chased him to a dead end. In the end, he had escaped into the sea. At the last moment, they had personally witnessed Chufeng being swallowed by a whale king. They had thought that he was dead, but now he had reappeared. Brat, you're quite the lucky one. The gray-haired man calmed himself down and sneered, revealing a sinister set of white teeth. In truth, he was quite apprehensive. A dead man had actually reappeared. This made him think of many things and made him feel uneasy. However, he could not show his stage fright. How did you survive? The Black Earth Dragon roared. It had raised its head and was more than 10 meters away. It had truly been frightened out of its wits. I don't want to talk to a dead man. Chufeng's killing intent pervaded the air as he strode forward. These 2 king-level entities had to die. There was nothing more to say. Clang! A scarlet ray of light flew out, dispersing the mist and illuminating the valley. Chu Feng's flying knife had slashed out with extreme speed. With two bangs, the communicators of the gray-haired man and the Earth Dragon were destroyed. These two were very cautious. They actually wanted to secretly communicate with the outside world. The Earth Dragon retreated. The black scales on its body opened up and emitted a black light. It had a bad feeling. The current Chu Feng was much stronger than when they had chased him. Earth Dragon, let's join hands and kill him. He's just a human who was chased by us like a stray dog. Who's he think he is? The gray-haired man said. Good, let's kill this brat. The black Earth Dragon roared. However, their actions were the complete opposite. The gray-haired man suddenly transformed into a gray eagle and soared into the sky. He actually wanted to use the Earth Dragon to stop Chu Feng. The Earth Dragon also turned tail and ran after uttering the word kill. Its gigantic body leapt into the air and landed on the ground, causing the earth to tremble. It had to be said that its speed was extremely fast. Both of them wanted to use each other to stop the enemy. As king-level entities, their spiritual senses were extremely sharp. They could sense that something was amiss. Moreover, this human brat dared to attack alone. He must have something up his sleeves. Perhaps he had brought a trump card. Didn't you want to imitate the 8-nation alliance and invade again? Is this all you've got? Chu Feng said coldly. At the same time, the scarlet flying knife rushed up and disappeared into the mist. Scarlet light flourished and became incomparably resplendent like a divine rainbow. Blood splattered everywhere. The gray eagle had only severed 2 shackles. How could he be a match for the current Chu Feng? It was directly chopped down, and its body was cut into 2. The gray eagle let out a miserable cry and rolled about on the ground. The scarlet flying knife descended once more and directly decapitated the bird king, ending its life. I should have kept you as a mount. Chu Feng was somewhat regretful. If he had captured a bird king, it would have been much faster and more convenient than taking a plane. He could have set off at any time. Up ahead, the black Earth Dragon was frightened out of his wits. A single slash had killed the gray eagle with 2 severed shackles. This was too terrifying. The Earth Dragon was stronger than the gray eagle, but not to the point of being excessively strong. He only had 1 more severed shackle. The Earth Dragon fled with all his might. He was a direct descendant of the Black Dragon and came from the same race. If the Black Dragon became the master of Mount Kunlun, he would surely rise as well. He didn't want to die here. However, the next moment, a figure rushed over and blocked his path. A scarlet flying knife was suspended in midair and aimed at him. The Earth Dragon's heart went cold. The opponent's speed was simply too fast, even faster than the Jilin King with 4 severed shackles. However, he couldn't fly and could only run. He knew he was most likely finished. Roar! The Earth Dragon let out a loud roar and spat out black flames. With a loud boom, the flames enveloped the entire area. This was his most powerful technique, capable of turning king-level entities into ashes. However, it was completely useless. Opposite him, the young man's body didn't even move. His body glowed with a mysterious energy that forced back the black flames. Moreover, a scarlet flying knife came slashing over, transforming into a shocking radiance. The Earth Dragon tried to block with his sharp claws, but unfortunately, he couldn't block it at all. With a puff, one of his large claws fell to the ground. He let out a miserable cry and roared. The Black Dragon won't let you go. If I die, you won't be able to live either. He didn't beg for mercy because he knew Chu Feng wouldn't let him go. The scarlet flying knife spun and descended once again. The Earth Dragon couldn't block it. Blood splattered out continuously as his tail and claws were all cut off. Finally, the scarlet flying knife spun around the Earth Dragon's neck and decapitated its head. The Earth Dragon was dead. Chu Feng's expression was calm. He wanted to replace the Earth Dragon and the Gray Eagle in guarding this place. He would wait for reinforcements from the west to arrive. If one came, he would kill one. If 2 came, he would kill 2. He was going to start a massacre. Chapter 178. The Misty Valley was ablaze with flames. It was a strange sight. Normally, there would be no light in this place, only darkness. A dead person is like an extinguished lamp. Even a king-level entity is no different from an ordinary creature after being killed. Their bodies are still flesh and blood, and they cannot be immortal. Chu Feng muttered to himself. He was roasting the earth dragon meat with practiced movements. Once the meat was golden and glossy, he began to sprinkle seasonings over it. He was practically a skilled worker. Just as he had said, king-level entities were extremely powerful when they were alive. They could withstand rocket attacks and had no fear of lethal firearms. But once they died, they would no longer be able to mobilize the mysterious energy within their bodies, and those miraculous properties would gradually disappear. Flesh was, after all, flesh and blood. It had not become refined iron, and its attributes had not changed. After a long time, it would be no different from ordinary flesh and blood. It would also rot. While it's still fresh, I should fry it and eat more, Chu Feng mumbled. The place was filled with a fragrant aroma. A king-level earth dragon and a king-level gray eagle were all top-grade ingredients. Chu Feng had turned them into sumptuous delicacies. There were large quantities of unopened red wine, vodka, brandy, cigars, and other supplies. Chu Feng leaned back in his chair and poured himself a glass of red wine. He then began to eat the golden earth dragon meat with a look of enjoyment. He had clearly come here to guard this place and to start a massacre, but now he looked like he was on a vacation, leisurely and relaxed. The gray eagle's wings had also been roasted until they were golden and glossy. He sprinkled some red wine on them and continued roasting. Red wine steak can't even compare to red wine eagle wings. Over the course of a day, he had fried the essences of the two king-class beasts and had eaten most of them. Chu Feng had nothing better to do while he was guarding this place. He went online and discovered that someone had created a list of the king-level experts of the Eastern Punitive Expedition. The Earth Dragon and the Gray Eagle were actually on the list. What combat strength ranking? It's more like a gourmet ranking. Chu Feng's post attracted many replies and comments. Brother, you're bragging too much. Those on the list are all king-level entities. Which one would you dare to eat? The crowd laughed at him. Not just you. You can ask the other king-level experts. How many of them would dare to use a creature with severed shackles as food? Who has eaten it before? People thought it was interesting and started to mock and ridicule him. Chu Feng silently posted a photo of him roasting a polar bear on the beach outside Jerusalem. He didn't say anything. He just posted the photo. Someone with sharp eyes discovered an abnormality. Although it was still a picture of a roasted white bear, there was one that was slightly different. It had never appeared before. This immediately caused a disturbance. Then a large group of people burst into an uproar. Great God of Jerusalem, you've finally shown yourself. Is the White Bear King's meat delicious? Oh my God, you're that ferocious man? God, you're really too bold. Don't tell me that after eating the White Bear King, you still want to eat the other king-class creatures on the ranking list? The appearance of the ferocious man from the sacred city caused a huge commotion. Originally, the Eastern Punitive Expedition's combat strength rankings were very strict and formal. However, after a few random images appeared, it had completely changed the atmosphere. Many people came to take a look, wanting to know more about this ferocious man. This was because he was too mysterious. After roasting the White Bear King, he didn't show his face at all. Now, he had actually set his eyes on the Eastern Punitive Expedition's combat strength rankings. Both the East and the West were shaken this time. That was because the White Bear King had indeed been roasted and eaten by someone. Now that the suspected culprit had appeared, how could it not cause a perilous storm? After professional verification, it was confirmed that the photo was not fake. It belonged to the same series as the previous photos and had all been taken at that time. This was tantamount to telling everyone that the culprit or someone related to the culprit had really appeared. The previously ridiculed comment suddenly became the most popular post. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of people had replied, truly becoming a towering building. The gourmet rankings. This was the ferocious man's decision regarding the combat strength rankings. Now, no one was ridiculing him. Everyone was sighing in admiration. Deity, are you going to make a big move again? Who do you want to eat? The expert from Jerusalem. Which one do you want to eat? Ferocious man, hurry up and make your move. The people of the East welcome you. Hurry to the foot of Mount Kunlun and eat the black dragon and the Arctic king. They taste great. Both the East and the West were shocked by this simple message, causing a huge uproar. In truth, this matter was even more serious than people had imagined. Some of the major corporations had already organized a team to investigate whether or not the expert from Jerusalem was really going to make another move. The White Bear King was an expert with 4 severed shackles, yet he had been reduced to food. This matter had never been cleared up, and everyone wanted to get to the bottom of it. The Eastern Punitive Expedition was even more furious than the others. At the same time, they were also somewhat afraid. Was that ferocious man really going to make another move? Even Schiller, the Black Dragon, and the Arctic King were alarmed. They were all thinking about how they had offended that expert from Jerusalem. Chu Feng was very leisurely waiting for the reinforcements to arrive. If he wasn't afraid of being exposed, he would have already posted the picture of the roasted Earth Dragon and Gray Falcon to strike a blow to the morale of the Eastern Punitive Expedition. Now, he could only hope that the Golden Lion King and the vampires would arrive sooner. However, his irresponsible actions had far-reaching repercussions, causing even the experts with 6 severed shackles to frown. Finally, the Elder Lion King spoke, boosting the morale of the Eastern Punitive Expedition. He was very unyielding and had never wavered in his determination to enter the home of myriad gods. I don't care who you are or where you come from. If I cross the East in the future, and you dare appear before me, I will slay you. The Elder Lion King's domineering attitude was a complete mess. He was clearly not afraid of any challenge, and he didn't even care whether or not that fierce person was a peerless expert from the Holy City. This was a kind of unrivaled confidence. I'm looking forward to the taste of lion meat. Finally, Chu Feng left another message. This time, he left this line of words under the combat strength rankings. For this reason, he even found a translation software because he could only understand broken English but not the language of the Holy City. In the blink of an eye, the entire East and West were in an uproar. Everyone was excited. Was this going to be a peerless battle akin to a comet crashing into the vast ocean? The Elder Lion King was very unyielding, but that fierce person was just as valiant as before. Did he want to eat lion meat? This was an expression of his fearlessness and also a challenge. The Elder Lion King was incomparably cold. Divine light shot out from his eyes, but he didn't argue. He only said one thing. He would kill his way to Mount Kunlun. In truth, when Chu Feng said he wanted to eat lion meat, he wasn't referring to the Elder Lion King, but the Golden Lion King who was about to arrive. He wasn't arrogant enough to fight to the death with an expert with 6 severed shackles. The Golden Lion King had the peerless Elder Lion King behind him. His actions had always been domineering and domineering. Last time at the Vatican, he had wanted to take the lives of Chu Feng and the 2 oxen. If Chu Feng hadn't shot out the diamond chakram at the critical moment, they would have most likely been killed by the Golden Lion King. This time, knowing that the Golden Lion King was going to pass by and join the battle at Mount Kunlun, Chu Feng naturally had to kill him. He couldn't let him go. Both the East and the West were in an uproar. They wanted to see just how peerless the Elder Lion King was. They also wanted to know what kind of earth-shattering move that fierce person would make. Early in the morning, Chu Feng walked out of the valley and arrived at the eastern region. He stepped into the Xinjiang Basin. He felt that the people changing guard would arrive soon, so he waited here in advance and prepared to intercept them. He passed through the misty region and bathed in the radiant morning glow. He circulated his special breathing technique, and his body became translucent. Every inch of his flesh was enveloped in the radiance of the sun. Previously, there was a poplar tree in this basin that had transformed into a tree king. However, it had long since disappeared. That old tree had escaped without a trace and avoided the Eastern Punitive Expedition. "They're here," Chu Feng whispered. After concluding his breathing technique, he saw two creatures walking over from the horizon. One of them was a lady with long hair draped over her shoulders. Her entire body was illuminated by the morning glow and suffused with a golden radiance. She was very beautiful. It was Xiao Na, a female expert from the Holy See. Beside her was a giant dog. Its entire body was scarlet, and its long fur was like a blazing flame. It looked extremely ferocious. It was also a king-level entity. The 8 experts who had chased Chu Feng into the sea last time included Xiao Na and this giant dog. Xiao Na was shocked to see Chu Feng. She had never thought that a dead man would come back to life and appear before her eyes. Her heart trembled violently as she thought of too many things. Avidu's death in Jerusalem and the earth-shattering changes in the Vatican. Could all of these be related to him? A woman's intuition was extremely sharp and terrifying. Xiao Na's heart was in turmoil, but she maintained a smile on her face. She affectionately shouted, "Dear Chu, this is truly an unexpected surprise. I didn't expect to meet you here. Come with me. You're very welcome to join the Holy See. Of course, if you're really unwilling, we won't force you." Chu Feng looked at her calmly and didn't reply. Last time, she had also put on a friendly expression, but when she was chasing after him, she had been ruthless. "Chu, aren't you happy? I really misunderstood you last time." Xiao Na combed her light golden hair and smiled warmly. Her snow-white face was exquisite, and her dark blue eyes were flowing with light. "No, I'm very happy because I can kill you now," Chu Feng replied. "No need to waste words with him. Last time he escaped. We won't let him go today." The giant dog roared. Whoosh! The giant dog pounced over. With 3 severed shackles, its strength was extraordinary. Chu Feng immediately rushed over and activated his divine feat to nearly 4 times the speed of sound. The air exploded as he met the dog head-on. After leaping up, he stomped down with 1 foot. Thump! The sound was loud and reverberated throughout the basin like a bolt of lightning. With a boom, the giant dog was sent flying and fell to the ground. Many of its snow-white teeth were broken, and its lower jaw was fractured to the point of almost shattering. Blood flowed out of its mouth and nose. It hadn't managed to bite off Chu Feng's foot, but it had been injured by the powerful impact. This made it furious. Swoosh! Xiao Na reacted. Her first thought wasn't to lend a helping hand, but to turn around and flee. She was horrified. At this level, Chu Feng wasn't someone an ordinary king-level entity could contend against. "Where do you think you're going?" Chu Feng rushed over. His speed was simply too fast, and he immediately caught up to her. He threw a punch forward, accompanied by a resplendent brilliance. It was as if a small sun had exploded. Thump! Xiao Na shifted her body sideways and quickly turned around to counterattack. In the end, the arms in front of her were bent in an unnatural manner. Both of her arms had been fractured after receiving a punch from Chu Feng. The kind of power wasn't something she could contend against. She was sent flying, her mouth full of blood. Roar! The giant dog pounced over and attacked from behind. Thump! This time, Chu Feng used the divine feat again. He swept his foot across the giant dog's body, causing its bones to crackle incessantly and many of them to break. Now, a single kick from Chu Feng was enough to shatter a small mountain. Only a king-level entity like this would be able to block it with their flesh and blood. Even so, the giant dog was finished. It had completely lost its combat strength. Puffed. The scarlet flying knife flew out and decapitated the giant dog. "It's your turn," Chu Feng said as he glanced at Xiao Na. "Chu, listen to me. There really is a misunderstanding between us. Can we sit down and talk?" Xiao Na's beautiful face turned pale as she shouted, "Why don't we go down and talk to Avidus?" Chu Feng said, "What? It really is you?" Xiao Na cried out in alarm. White Bear had been roasted and eaten by Chu Feng. This was too shocking. Puffed. The palm-sized crimson flying sword spun and finally caught up to Jonah, who was constantly dodging, and beheaded her. At this point, all the guards had been killed. Chu Feng carried their corpses and threw them into the valley. He then walked toward the other exit and soon arrived in Greek soil, waiting for the Golden Lion King's arrival. At noon, the Golden Lion King's party approached the area. They weren't too far away. Ah, that person from Jerusalem is truly arrogant. He dares to provoke the peerless king of the lion race. The Dole King shook his head. The Golden Lion King coldly said, "He's just a madman who wants to eat the flesh and blood of the lion race. He truly doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth." He had already recovered from his injuries. As a king-level entity, his physique was incomparably tyrannical. His golden hair was draped over his shoulders, his eyes were like cold lightning, and his aura was terrifying. It's truly regretful. That Chu Feng is dead. I wanted to skin him myself. How I wish he was still alive, the Golden Lion King said. Last time, he had been injured in the medicinal garden, which was a great humiliation. A mere human was far inferior to him in terms of strength. If not for that strange bracelet, he would have torn the human named Chu Feng to pieces long ago. Consider him lucky. Otherwise, he would have been better off dead the next time he met me, the Golden Lion King coldly said. Chapter 179. He's only at one severed shackle, yet he dares to act so atrociously in the West. This kind of person doesn't know the difference between life and death. We'll kill as many as we come. There's no suspense, said the Vulture King. The Dole King also spoke. His words were filled with disdain towards Chu Feng. Who does he think he is? In a fair fight, I'm more than enough to kill him. He then turned to the Golden Lion King and said with a smile, "It's good that he's dead. Brother Lion is such a powerful king. If I were to kill him personally, it would only lower my own status and dirty my hands." Back then, it was the Dole King who instigated the Golden Lion King to take action. In the end, they clashed with Chu Feng's group at the sacred medicinal garden. There weren't many trees in the mountainous region, but they were all verdant. Some of the pine trees had vigorous branches that resembled young dragons stretching out and meandering through the area. The Golden Lion King's body was tall and straight. He stepped on a thick layer of pine needles with a steady gait. His eyes were like lightning, and his entire being was full of energy. There was a vast amount of blood energy lying dormant within his body, containing a terrifying amount of energy. Even the slightest wisp of it would increase the pressure on the people around him. This group could be considered a powerful force, 3 king-level entities and 7 quasi-kings. If they were to rush to Mount Kunlun, they would definitely be a powerful force. Thump! A boulder the size of a millstone was sent flying by the Vulture King's kick, disappearing into the distant mountain forest. They were now in human form and gazing at the misty region in front of them. They were not far from the valley. After passing through this misty valley, we'll be standing on the land of the east. We're not far from Mount Kunlun. I'm really looking forward to conquering that mountain. The Dole King's laughter was unpleasant to the ears. East I'm coming. The Golden Lion King spoke. He was influenced by the Elder Lion King and had been eyeing the east for a long time. His eyes were burning with passion, and he wanted nothing more than to kill his way over. The Dole King said respectfully, "Apart from experts with 6 severed shackles, who can stop Brother Lion's footsteps? When the time comes, we'll be able to sweep through everything. Once we succeed in conquering Mount Kunlun, we'll be able to conquer even more famed mountains." The Golden Lion King nodded with a cold expression. "We must conquer the home of myriad gods. Whoever stands in our way will die. That is the foundation for us to become gods." Clearly, Kunlun was regarded as a transcendent holy land by them, and it actually involved the concept of becoming a god. If there is a chance, we will still head east and seize the pilgrimage land. The Golden Lion carried a smile, but it was a bit cold. Its pupils released intimidating golden beams of light. Conquer the home of myriad deities, conquer the pilgrimage grounds. Behind them, a few quasi-kings cheered loudly with excitement and yearning. When the time came, they would also be able to evolve together. The group stepped into the fog and walked toward the canyon. It was also at this time that a figure was walking out, and the distance between them was less than 10 miles. "Someone's here." The Golden Lion was extremely sharp. Even though the mist region was strange and blocked his line of sight, he could still sense it. His eyes flickered with radiance. Chu Feng didn't conceal his aura and strode over. He also sensed a group of people approaching from the opposite side. Could it be that the people guarding the passage knew we were coming and came to welcome us? The Dole King asked. He had nothing to worry about. With the Black Dragon and the Arctic King leading the way, who would dare to barge into the eastern world's Mount Kunlun? Moreover, he was walking together with the Golden Lion King, so there was no need to worry about encountering other experts. Anyone who dared to block their way was simply courting death. That's right, I've come to welcome you. Chu Feng had a smile on his face as he transmitted his voice from several kilometers away. He utilized his divine feet and strode forward calmly and normally, but every time his foot touched the ground, he would appear dozens of meters away and arrive at great speed. Who is it? Why does the voice sound so familiar? The Dole King was suspicious. Before long, Chu Feng had arrived. He didn't exceed the speed of sound and calmly arrived. He looked at the group of people in front of him through the white fog. How can it be you? The Dole King shouted. In that instant, he felt goosebumps all over his body and his scalp went taut. What was going on? Why had a dead person appeared? Since the heavens couldn't take me in, I naturally had to stay in this world, Chu Feng calmly said. The Vatican was attacked by missiles. Could it be your doing? The Dole King shouted. After becoming a king-level expert, his intuition was sharp, and he immediately made this connection. After thinking about it carefully, his hair stood on end, and he was deeply frightened. Not to mention him, even the Golden Lion King's pupils constricted. Today's unexpected discovery of Chu Feng had truly shocked them. That's right, the firecrackers were set off by me. I'll give you a taste of your own medicine. Chu Feng smiled brilliantly. He did not hide anything and shared his joy and accomplishment with them. The expressions of these people changed in an instant. This news was too shocking. They were shaken. This earth-shattering crime was actually committed by the Eastern Chu Feng. If this news were to spread, it would definitely shake the entire world. The Dole King, the Vulture King, and the Quasi-Beast Kings behind them were all dumbfounded. Boundless waves of shock surged within their hearts, and they were almost scared silly. Everyone thought he was dead, but in the end, he had done something so stealthily and pierced the heavens. The most frightening thing was that the world still did not know it was him. What else did he want to do? This caused everyone to tremble in fear. Demon King Chu was hiding in the dark, and it was obvious that he was planning something big. This caused everyone to feel extremely uneasy. In the blink of an eye, this group of people thought of many things. Don't tell me you killed the Vidus and the White Bear, the Vulture King asked. Yes, Chu Feng admitted calmly. The group of people was shocked. The one who roasted the White Bear was actually him? The so-called Great God of Jerusalem was actually Demon King Chu. If this news were to spread out, it would definitely be earth-shattering and explosive. It would become the headlines of every nation. Chi! Scarlet light blossomed as Chu Feng's flying dagger flew out like a red flood dragon. It tore apart a quasi-beast king's hand and communicator, causing it to fall to the ground. That person let out a miserable cry. He wanted to inform the outside world about this shocking secret, because it was simply too shocking. Everyone in the world was talking about these two earth-shattering crimes. Who would have thought that they were committed by a dead person? You're just one person, yet you want to kill us? The Dole King's eyes flickered with a cold light. He was deeply shocked and angry, and his hostility towards Chu Feng was extremely strong. Chu Feng laughed without saying anything. This was his goal, to kill this batch of reinforcements and intimidate the Eastern Punitive Expedition. Arrogant, the Dole King sneered. Then come and try. Chu Feng took a step forward. This Dole King had always been targeting him back at the Vatican. Now that they had met again, there was nothing more to say. It was time to send him on his way. With a Lion King here, how dare you act so presumptuously? The Dole King was feeling guilty. He really did not dare to attack. Even the White Bear had been roasted. He would only die if he went up to face the enemy. Haven't you always wanted to kill me? Why are you retreating now? Chu Feng pressed forward. The Dole King's expression changed as he retreated. Behind him, the quasi-beast kings all revealed strange expressions. Not long ago, the Dole King had been very domineering, saying that Chu Feng was nothing. In a fair fight, he could easily kill Chu Feng. But now he was retreating. The Golden Lion King, who had been calm all this time, finally moved. He strode forward without the slightest bit of fear. On the contrary, a crazed expression appeared on his face as his eyes burned with passion. His body was emitting a terrifying aura, and the energy fluctuations were too terrifying. Very good, you didn't die. This is the greatest gift the heavens have given me. Wait for me to personally tear you apart. The Golden Lion King opened his mouth. His blood chi overflowed to the heavens, suppressing the entire area. However, Chu Feng was not afraid at all. Let me settle my grudge with the Dole King first. I'll settle it with you later. Swoosh. The next moment, he made his move, charging straight towards the Dole King. You. The Dole King was horrified. He did not dare to fight against Chu Feng. He had a premonition that he was not his opponent and quickly retreated. At the same time, the Golden Lion King made his move. With an earth-shattering roar, an ocean-like golden radiance erupted from his body, slamming towards Chu Feng. Thump! Chu Feng exchanged a blow with the Golden Lion King, but he did not change his direction and chased after the Dole King. You dare! The Golden Lion King's eyes were cold. Chu Feng dared to bypass him and kill the Dole King. Why wouldn't I dare? Chu Feng chased after him, breaking through the sound barrier. His speed was much faster than the Dole King's, and in the blink of an eye, he had reached the mountain forest. The Dole King felt his hair stand on end. He had not expected Chu Feng to bypass the Golden Lion King and arrive before him. This was too tyrannical, and his strength was much higher than before. He roared and used all his strength to fight fiercely against Chu Feng. He wanted to wait for the Golden Lion King to arrive and then kill him in a tyrannical manner. However, the Dole King's expression changed after just one exchange. His face turned deathly pale as one of his palms was struck by the fist. First it cracked open, then blood flowed out, and finally it exploded. The Dole King roared in extreme pain. He had never imagined that he would be gravely injured after just one exchange. Just how powerful was this Demon King Chu? He was completely flustered. He felt that the current Chu Feng was not weaker than the Golden Lion King, and might even be stronger. Thump! 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 Chu Feng attacked furiously, determined to kill the Dole King. Within a split second, the fist seal shone brilliantly like the sun in the sky, illuminating the entire mountain forest. The Dole King let out a miserable cry as both of his arms were broken. He spat out a mouthful of blood as his body was sent flying, crashing into the trees and boulders. How dare you? The Golden Lion King was furious. He rushed over to block Chu Feng. Behind him, the group was shaken. It had only been a few exchanges, but the Dole King was already on the verge of death. Both of his arms had turned into a mist of blood. His shoulder had exploded, and one of his legs had fallen off. Just how powerful was that? These people were all horrified. The Golden Lion King rushed over, but it was already too late. Chu Feng's fist seals were simply too powerful. One punch after another was sent flying. The Dole King was on the verge of despair. He tried his best to evade, and if he couldn't evade, he would take the blow head-on. In the end, the Golden Lion King did not manage to save him. Boom! Chu Feng's fist pierced through the air. The Dole King let out a mournful cry as his body exploded into pieces in midair. The people behind him were all shaken. Chu Feng had killed a king-level entity right in front of the Golden Lion King. This caused everyone to feel a chill run down their spines. Chapter 180. The Dole King was dead and had reverted to his true form. His corpse was lying on the mountainous ground, crippled. Such a powerful beast king had been killed in the blink of an eye. This was truly shocking. The group behind him wanted nothing more than to run away immediately. The Dole King had been killed in just a few punches. The The Golden Lion King's expression was cold as he closed in step by step. Chu Feng had killed his troops in front of him. This was a serious provocation, and coupled with his old hatred, his killing intent was surging. "You were the one who provoked the Elder Lion King, weren't you?" the Golden Lion King asked. "I do indeed want to eat lion meat." Chu Feng looked straight at him without any ripples. His main goal this time was to kill this lion within the Misty Valley. Last time at the Vatican, the Golden Lion King had been domineering and tyrannical, wanting to kill him, the yellow cattle, and the black yak. Now, the tables had turned. He wanted to slaughter the lion. "Roar!" The Golden Lion King roared. His entire body shone with golden light as his long hair danced in the wind. The people behind him trembled in fear and couldn't help but retreat. The Lion King's roar had struck fear into their hearts. Back in the day, he was the king of all beasts. Now he was still the peerless Golden Lion King, known to be peerless within the same realm. "Very well, I've always hoped that you would live. Who would have thought that the heavens would grant my wish?" The Golden Lion King's body erupted with golden flames. His aura surged, and his entire body was enveloped in a resplendent golden light, emitting a terrifying aura that could shake one's soul. Last time, he was wounded by Chu Feng's diamond chakram and viewed it as a great humiliation. Every time he thought about it, he would go crazy and want nothing more than to kill that human. But later on, he heard that Chu Feng had died. This made him extremely angry because he didn't even have the chance to kill the human himself. This made him extremely unwilling. He had always been domineering and confident in his invincibility. He wouldn't allow himself to be defeated. He wanted to kill Chu Feng with his own hands to wash away that stain. And now, he had actually waited for such an opportunity. The surrounding people retreated again and again, not daring to approach that area. They were very clear about the Lion King's strength. Once he went berserk, he would kill all gods and Buddhas in his way. As for this Chu Feng, although they couldn't see through him, the things he had done recently were truly shocking. Roasting the White Bear King, flattening the Vatican City, and even wanting to taste the flesh and blood of the Lion King. Which of these were not major events that caused the world to seethe with excitement? Chu Feng was a madman. It's not certain who will kill who. Chu Feng glanced at the Golden Lion King. "You. If it wasn't for the sneak attack last time, you wouldn't be able to be compared to me. Who do you think you are?" The Golden Lion King's expression was cold as he rushed over with a single step. He was filled with astonishing killing intent and wanted to cut off Chu Feng's head. He was excessively powerful. He was very conceited and arrogant. He was confident that he could sweep through all his opponents. Apart from experts with 6 severed shackles, he had no fear of any expert, king of a Chu to him. The Lion King's palm was dazzling to the extreme. Dazzling divine light surged violently like a river bursting its banks, causing the ancient trees in the vicinity to explode and the boulders to split into pieces before floating in midair. This was caused by the leakage of his mysterious energy. Chu Feng was fearless. He faced it head-on and unleashed his fist imprints, smashing towards the Golden Lion King. They collided head-on. Fist and palm collided. It was as if a heaven-shaking thunderbolt had descended, and a great explosion occurred. Boom! The mountain forest exploded. Smoke and dust filled the air. Countless trees and brambles in the surroundings were instantly torn apart. Even the ground cracked open, one black crack after another. This was a huge collision between the two of them. They each retreated, and no one could do anything to the other. In the distance, those people shivered inwardly. Just how powerful was this power? Just the aftermath of the battle had such astonishing destructive power. If they were the ones who went up, they would have been turned into a pile of minced meat immediately. The golden lion's head of long hair erupted with sun-like radiance, dazzling to the extreme. He was actually smiling, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth, carrying excitement and even fanaticism. This was the excitement of seeing a prey. This was a madman who had always been conceited. Now that he had encountered a powerful opponent, it gave birth to an even stronger fighting spirit. Only like this is interesting. If I directly killed you, wouldn't it be too boring? He said softly. However, his voice resounded through the entire mountain forest like a clap of thunder. In the rear, those people's hearts were palpitating. Every single one of them felt uneasy. The golden lion's craziness made them all feel scared. Chu Feng replied, "It is indeed interesting. If I kill you and cook a pot of lion meat, I believe it will be enough to shut up the old lion's mouth. He is threatening me. Does he think I don't dare?" In the distance, those people felt their scalps go numb. This person was even more crazy, not inferior to the golden lion in the slightest. The golden lion's eyes were like the edge of a blade. He laughed coldly and closed in step by step. His body became more and more dazzling, and it was already difficult to look at him directly. The current him was like a deity. He was wrapped within a sphere of golden light. It was dazzling and filled with a terrifying ocean-like fluctuation. If other creatures of the same realm stood here, forget about becoming his enemy. It would be difficult for them to even confront him. It was because this kind of aura was too oppressive and made them tremble. That was the golden lion's faint golden blood energy. As he operated a certain breathing technique, his body emitted a terrifying energy that rose and fell like a resplendent ocean. It was as if a deity had descended to the mortal world. This was an illusion he gave off. Tens of thousands of beams of golden light surged outwards, causing the entire mountain forest to tremble. He had reached the highest peak he could reach after severing his fourth shackle. "Kill!" The golden lion roared. Within the golden ocean, he descended like a deity and charged towards Chu Feng. His palm imprint enlarged and smashed down like a small immortal mountain. It was obvious that this lion had obtained a great fortune. He had obtained a mysterious inheritance, including a breathing technique and a palm technique. Now, he was attacking without holding anything back. The scene was terrifying. If it was an ordinary king, even if they were the same realm, they would have been smashed into pieces by this palm strike. It was just that how could Chu Feng be weaker than him? Even though he had severed one shackle less, his breathing technique was even more special and astonishing. Every transformation would greatly improve his constitution, surpassing others. Now, he was exceptionally powerful. The demon ox fist was boundlessly majestic. It was as if he had arrived at the primordial era. The sky was high and the blood sun covered the sky. The earth was boundless and boundless. A wild ox reached the heavens and trampled the 9 hells. With a roar, it tore through the sky and stepped into the cosmos. Boom! This kind of fist intent dispersed the golden light and collided with the golden lion fist palm. A terrifying energy ripple erupted and then exploded. In the surroundings, millstone-sized rocks flew into the sky like blades of grass. The ancient trees in the vicinity were pulverized while the great trees in the distance were uprooted and also flew into the air. This was the astonishing destructive power of a confrontation between two great experts. The surrounding mountains were in a state of chaos and were about to be flattened. Thump! Lightning flashed as the two collided. That was the radiance produced by their fists and palms. It was accompanied by a sonic boom that was even more terrifying than heavenly thunder. After reaching supersonic speeds, the air exploded, the mountains crumbled, the giant trees disintegrated, and rocks fell to the sky. This kind of scene made people's hair stand on end. Thump, thump, thump. Chu Feng and the golden lion fist continued to exchange blows. The two soared into the sky, stepping on treetops and boulders. Each time, they would fly hundreds of meters in the air as they fought fiercely. They were like gods. The others were dumbfounded. Some quasi-kings were trembling in fear. This kind of aura caused them to be incomparably afraid. The two of them soared through the air as if they were flying. This kind of battle was difficult for them to reach. Someone's eyes flickered. He took out his communicator and was about to send a message. However, the next moment, he let out a miserable scream as he experienced the pain of the previous quasi-king. The scarlet flying knife shot over and chopped off on his arms. This shocked everyone. Chu Feng naturally did not want them to leak out information. That was because there was still a group of vampires that had yet to arrive. He wanted to kill them all here. The golden lion fist's golden pupils shot out a cold light. Chu Feng had once again attacked his troops in front of him in a domineering and ostentatious manner. "Kill!" the golden lion fist shouted. His hands formed a strange and unfathomable seal, but it released a majestic aura. It was as if a deity was forming a seal to suppress all enemies in the world. One could vaguely see a blurry figure appear behind him. It resonated with his palm imprints and was supported by his secret art. The power was vigorous and tyrannical. In the blink of an eye, the golden lion fist's power surged and the golden light became even more astonishing. The entire mountain forest became resplendent, as if it was covered in the morning glow. At the same time, Chu Feng circulated his special breathing technique and displayed the divine form of the demon ox fist. A wild ox towered between the sky and the earth, surrounded by countless stars. It roared and howled as if it wanted to tear the starry skies apart. Boom! This was another great collision between the two. Both of them had used their ultimate moves. 1,000 layers of waves surged up. Those were earth and rocks. The ground had completely collapsed, and magma was splashing in all directions. The earth and rocks were melted by the blazing energy radiance they emitted. The two were sent flying. Chu Feng's body swayed as his chest heaved up and down violently. His face was slightly pale. This was the most powerful opponent he had ever encountered. He had to go all out. In the distance, the golden lion fist was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. Anger appeared on his face, and he couldn't believe that he had actually been injured in such a battle. Last time, the other party had relied on the diamond chakram, but this time it was a head-on clash without any tricks. This result was difficult for him to accept. Roar! The golden lion fist roared. In the blink of an eye, sand and pebbles were sent flying and the mountains shook. The earth and rocks in the area were blasted apart, and the magma from earlier also rushed into the sky. This was truly the lion roar sonic art. In the distance, a group of people were horrified. Some quasi-kings were screaming in misery as they covered their ears and retreated at lightning speed. The golden lion fist had gone berserk. His long golden hair danced in the wind as if it was about to burst into flames. Terrifying fluctuations erupted like the eruption of a volcano. With a boom, he leapt forward while still letting out the same lion roar, shattering the mountainous terrain. Ordinary beast kings couldn't bear it. Golden ripples surged out, tearing apart tangible matter. Bang, 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 boulders exploded and the vegetation was torn apart inch by inch. The golden lion fist rushed over to fight against Chu Feng. Faint golden blood energy pervaded out from his body, accompanied by terrifying energy fluctuations. Chu Feng stood in the distance and let out a loud roar. He used the demon ox roar to meet the lion roar and also rushed over. The two met and collided fiercely. The fist imprints and the lion's paws collided violently at supersonic speeds. A huge explosion erupted as beams of lightning like light flew out and exploded the air. This was an earth-shattering battle. For a beast with 3 or 4 severed shackles to be able to kill to this extent was unprecedented. The other beast kings of the same realm simply couldn't compare to them. Thump! With a single leap, they traversed hundreds of meters and arrived on top of Short Mountain. Blood splattered everywhere as they fought fiercely. Both of them were injured. Thump! The golden lion fist struck out, but Chu Feng evaded it. Golden energy surged as this palm strike caused the top of the small mountain to collapse. Rubble flew into the sky, causing the people below to be dumbfounded. Boom! Chu Feng activated his divine feet and stomped on the golden lion fist, sending him flying. His feet landed on the small mountain, causing it to collapse once more. This kind of power was incomparably terrifying and could easily break a mountain. Uffed. Chu Feng was sent flying after being struck by a palm. His left shoulder was in intense pain as he coughed out blood. He had been injured. However, the golden lion fist's injuries were even more serious. After being struck in the chest, blood splattered everywhere. The fist imprint had caused a bone-deep wound. Chu Feng stood in the distance and revealed an astonished expression. Any other king-level entity would have been smashed to pieces by such a punch, but the Golden Lion Fist had actually taken it head-on. "I'll slaughter you," the Golden Lion Fist roared. The Golden Lion roared angrily. In a true great confrontation, he was actually at a disadvantage, suffering greatly. He went crazy. Roar! At this moment, his breathing became hurried as golden mist gushed out from his nose and mouth. Finally, it turned into a tempest, pulverizing the surrounding rocks with each breath. It was even sharper than a sword. He had crossed the sky to fight a decisive battle with Chu Feng. Chu Feng's eyes erupted with divine light as he circulated his physical fist arts to the extreme. Every movement of his was suffused with blazing light as his pores opened up to absorb and release energy. Boom! The small mountain was completely destroyed by Chu Feng's stomps. He and the Golden Lion Fist collided and fought a bloody battle to the end. The two moved like two bolts of lightning. Explosions rang out incessantly as they soared through the sky and switched battlefields. In just a short period of time, they had already crushed more than 10 small mountains. This was a world-shaking scene. In the end, the Golden Lion Fist let out an unwilling roar, but was powerless to reverse the situation. He was sent flying by Chu Feng, who had punched a hole through his chest. Thump! Following which, Chu Feng used his divine feet to kick the Golden Lion Fist until his chest caved in. The Golden Lion Fist was flung away and landed at the foot of the mountain. With a thump, Chu Feng jumped down from the peak. This height was nothing to him. He was like a javelin nailed to the ground, causing the earth to crack. He looked down at the bloody Golden Lion Fist. Chapter 181. The Golden Lion King was coughing up blood and gasping for breath. He was in despair, and at the same time, his heart was filled with bitterness and unwillingness. He had actually been defeated in a direct confrontation. Now, he had lost all of his abilities, his chest had been pierced through, and his heart was in pieces. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to survive. He coughed out blood as soon as he opened his mouth, and blood gushed out from the wound on his chest. His scarlet blood was actually suffused with a faint golden glow, containing an exuberant vitality. However, the loss was too severe and he couldn't stop it. "You're very powerful, but you'll die in the end." The Golden Lion King's voice was very soft. He believed that the Elder Lion King would avenge him. A truly berserk Elder Lion King was unrivaled. Chu Feng suddenly raised his head and saw the Vulture King spreading his wings and soaring into the sky. The Golden Lion King's defeat almost scared the group out of their wits. How could they not be afraid when the Lion King, who was thought to be invincible among his peers, was about to die? At first, they thought that the Lion King would win in the end. After going berserk, the Lion King's combat strength would increase explosively and that human would be killed in the end. Who would have thought that the Golden Lion King would indeed injure Chu Feng after going berserk, causing him to cough up blood? However, the Golden Lion King himself was in an even worse state. He was directly blasted to death. That Demon King Chu was even more terrifying. "Where do you think you're going?" Chu Feng charged out with a boom, but he dealt the Golden Lion a heavy blow before he got up. He stomped on his forehead with his left foot to prevent him from using his secret technique to resurrect. He had heard from Yellow Cattle that there were too many strange methods in the various worlds. Some secret techniques could even allow a person who had been dead for several days to crawl out from the grave and come back to life. On Earth, who knew how many creatures had obtained ancient inheritances? It was hard to say what kind of secret techniques they had grasped. He had no choice but to be on guard. "Run, Demon King Chu is coming." The ones who were the most terrified were the Quasi-Kings. They had thought that the Golden Lion King was invincible and were waiting for him to slaughter that human. Who would have thought that the final outcome would be like this? Of course, some of the shrewder Quasi-Kings had long since hidden in the distance. They were extremely crafty, afraid that the human would chase after them after winning. It was just that these crafty quasi-kings had underestimated Chu Feng's strength. With his current powerful spiritual sense, he could directly sense the vigorous life force of any powerful creature within several li. Chu Feng sped up, moving faster and faster. His figure was faster than the speed of sound, and he directly crashed into the bodies of the quasi-kings. This was no different from killing them, incomparably tyrannical. His king-level physical body was extremely terrifying, and he crashed at close to 4 times the speed of sound. It was as if a divine mountain had smashed into them. Bang! 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 Blood-curdling screams rang out one after another. Even someone as strong as a quasi-king couldn't withstand Chu Feng's tyrannical attacks. Some were killed, while others were injured. Blood sprayed everywhere in the air. Let alone them. Even if a small mountain blocked his path, Chu Feng would be able to crush it with a single stomp. Right now, his physique was wrapped in a mysterious energy. It was ridiculously strong and frightening. Clang! Chu Feng took out his flying sword and slashed it at the Vulture King. His speed was fast enough, and he had already chased after the Vulture King. Unfortunately, the Vulture King had already flown out of the flying sword's attack range. The scarlet sword circled in the air like a red flood dragon before flying back. The Vulture King was also drenched in cold sweat. It had originally thought that it could escape at any time, but who would have thought that the Demon King's speed would be so shocking? This speed was much faster than when he was fighting against the Golden Lion King, causing the Vulture King to break out in cold sweat. Chu Feng, you've killed the Golden Lion King today. You're destined not to live for long. I'll report this to the Elder Lion King and have him come out immediately to take your life. The Vulture King shouted. At the same time, it increased its speed. However, on the ground, Chu Feng's expression was calm. He was still madly running at a shocking speed, and any vegetation in his way was smashed into pieces. He was still chasing after the Vulture King with no intention of stopping. The Vulture King was afraid. If he had been just a step slower, he would have been killed. It was fleeing westward, and, at the same time, it was increasing its altitude to get away from the ground. I'll tell the outside world that you're the one who flattened the Vatican and roasted polar bear. At that time, Master Schiller and the Arctic King will also take action to kill you. There'll be no path to heaven, no door to hell, and no place to be buried. The Vulture King snarled. However, it was soon shocked to find that there was a mountain range below it. It let out a loud cry and flew upwards with all its might, even trying to change direction. But it was too late. Chu Feng was madly rushing over. Even though the road conditions were terrible, his speed did not decrease at all. His body lit up, and like a bolt of lightning, he shot up a mountain peak and soared into the sky. At this moment, Chu Feng was like a ballistic missile. His whole body was blazing with resplendent light as he rushed into the sky. He was already 800 meters above the mountain peak. Moreover, he was still ascending. Borrowing the momentum, he seemed to be flying. The Vulture King was so scared that its soul almost left its body. It did its utmost to fly higher, and the flying sword brushed past its body, causing its hair to stand on end. Fortunately, it had not hit its target. However, the next moment, its body tensed up. Its heart was filled with panic and fear. It felt as if it had been targeted by a prehistoric beast and was about to swallow it whole. Buzz! The air trembled as Chu Feng hurled out the diamond chakram. At first, he didn't want to use this killer weapon. A Vulture King was not worth staining the diamond chakram with blood. But seeing that it was about to escape, Chu Feng could only hurl it out. Bang! The Vulture King exploded in midair. The lower half of its body had completely disappeared, turning into a bloody mist. It screamed miserably as it plummeted from the sky. After reaching a certain height, Chu Feng also began to fall. He didn't even use his spiritual arts to control the speed of his descent. And just like that, he smashed into another mountain peak. Boom! Earth and rocks flew everywhere, and smoke and dust filled the air. However, Chu Feng was unharmed. After severing 3 shackles, His constitution was now excessively strong. Even falling from such a high altitude did not injure him. Boom! Furthermore, he directly jumped off the mountain peak and landed on the ground, smashing a deep pit. The trees were smashed into pieces and rocks flew everywhere. Chu Feng was running rapidly in search of the diamond chakram. He couldn't afford to lose this weapon. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, he immediately rushed over. Without any mishaps, he found the diamond chakram under his powerful divine instincts. Its entire body was snow white without a single trace of blood. It was as gentle as a fine jade. Chu Feng put it back on his wrist and then went to find the Vulture King. It was in a miserable state, but it hadn't breathed its last. However, half of its body had disappeared, and there was no way it could survive. "Don't kill me, save me." The Vulture King was trembling in fear. Its body was covered in blood, and it begged Chu Feng to spare it. "You're really afraid of death. Even a deity can't save you in such a state." Chu Feng shook his head and took out his communicator to take a few pictures of the beast. The Vulture King trembled. Even though it was about to die, it still felt its scalp go numb. This demon king, Chu, couldn't possibly be planning to roast it and post a picture of it, could he? "Don't worry, I won't eat you," Chu Feng said. He could post a picture to intimidate the Eastern Punitive Expedition and lower their morale, but vultures were definitely not good food. This kind of creature liked to eat rotting corpses, which made him feel disgusted. In the end, the Vulture King breathed its last in despair and fear. Chu Feng hurried back and dealt with the injured but not yet dead quasi-kings. Two of them were even more cunning and had hidden themselves. Chu Feng managed to find them, but they couldn't escape this calamity. With his powerful divine instincts and 4 times the speed of sound, the quasi-kings were simply too weak. By the time Chu Feng returned, the Golden Lion King had already reverted to his true form and was thoroughly dead. Chu Feng carried the corpses of the Golden Lion King and the Dole King into the valley. One of the quasi-kings was actually a human and was in charge of leading the way. He had nothing to sympathize with. These experts were all going to attack Mount Kunlun. The so-called Eastern Punitive Expedition was nothing more than an invasion. Some of the king-level entities even compared this expedition to the East with the 8-Nation Alliance. They were both proud and complacent at the same time. Not long after, an alluring smell of meat wafted through the valley. Chu Feng had skinned the Golden Lion King, washed it, and cooked it. The meat was extremely delicious and had a faint golden luster to it. "That old lion is trying to scare me. If I were to release these pictures, would it go crazy and kill me?" he muttered to himself. There were also pictures of the Vulture King, the Dole King, the Earth Dragon, the Gray Falcon, and the Vulture King. None of these pictures had been released. If they were to be uploaded, the entire East and West would be in an uproar. At the same time, it was not hard to imagine that the Eastern Punitive Expedition would be frightened out of their wits. So many king-level entities had died in the Misty Valley. Even the Black Dragon and the Arctic King would not be able to sit still. I have to choose a good time to release it. At the very least, I have to get rid of the incoming vampires. Chu Feng began to enjoy the delicious meal. Lion meat could be considered a rare delicacy, especially this golden lion with 4 severed shackles. It contained an unimaginable amount of vitality. This was the most powerful creature Chu Feng had ever eaten. If the outside world were to know that the Golden Lion King, known to be invincible within the same level, had died and been eaten by someone, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. That was because even the Dole King, the Vulture, the Earth Dragon, and the Giant Dog added together could not compare to this Golden Lion King. If it were to die, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Following that, Chu Feng roasted the Dole King. Although its body had been torn into pieces, it did not affect the glutton at all. Only the vampires are left. I will be done after dealing with them. Fui go. Chu Feng opened a bottle of red wine to celebrate his success and enjoyed the feast of the Beast King. If he were to immediately announce the scene of his meal, the whole world would be in a state of silence. Everyone would be stunned. Great God of Jerusalem, may I ask when you will make your move? We have been waiting for you to release a new delicacy. Fierce man, don't tell me you were scared off by that old lion? When are you going to update the gourmet rankings? In the outside world, some people were eager to see the world in chaos. They left messages under the rankings of the Eastern Punitive Expedition, calling for the fierce man from the holy city of Jerusalem. Out of everyone's expectations, that fierce man actually responded in the first instant. I've eaten too much recently. Let me digest it first. I'll go hunting later. Many people were shocked. Soon after, it triggered a heated discussion. Was this fierce man really going to make a move? Chapter 182. Within the valley, Chu Feng was truly stuffed. The lion meat was tender and not greasy at all. There was a special fragrance permeating through his entire body as he breathed it in, especially since it could strengthen one's spirit. Is this a treasured medicine? Chu Feng was puzzled. He discovered that his spirit was abnormally vigorous after eating the lion meat. He was brimming with energy and seemed to have an inexhaustible supply of energy. Previously, he had been injured during the battle with the Golden Lion King and had coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. Although he had recovered after circulating his special breathing technique, he had still lost some blood. But now, he was full of vigor and had recovered completely. There were even signs that he was about to evolve. I'll continue to eat next time, Chu Feng mumbled. That night, the bonfire flickered. As expected, he once again began to feast on the lion meat. This time, it was roasted to a golden brown and was no longer boiled. All the pores on his body opened up and gushed out with dazzling essence energy. His entire body was bathed in radiance. Chu Feng circulated his special breathing technique and began to adjust himself. He felt his body becoming stronger and stronger. After severing his third shackle, he had consolidated his foundation within a few short days. He was extremely vigilant that night. He was worried that something big would happen after killing so many beast kings. With a swoosh, Chu Feng left the place and rested in a secret location outside the valley to avoid any mishaps. The night passed peacefully without any danger. If they didn't come, I really would have left, Chu Feng muttered to himself. He felt that he couldn't wait any longer and should quit while he was ahead. As time went on, the Beast Kings would lose contact with the outside world. This would definitely lead to suspicions and problems. Chu Feng returned to the valley to take a look. He had left behind a pile of Earth King-level skeletons. It was a shocking sight and would likely cause a heart attack if discovered. He left in large strides, deciding to end this interception journey. After walking out of the misty region, the air was exceptionally fresh. The red sun was rising, bringing with it a vigorous vitality. Chu Feng circulated his breathing technique as he walked. Both his body and spirit felt extremely comfortable. When the sun had completely risen, Chu Feng arrived at the nearest small town and changed into a new set of clothes. The recent battles had left his clothes in tatters. However, this problem could be solved in the future. In his huge bag, there was the skin of an earth dragon, a Dole King, and a Golden Lion King. Even if these things were made into armor, they would be considered treasured armors. Making them into clothes would obviously be a little extravagant and wasteful. Chu Feng walked out of the small town. After thinking for a while, he used his communicator to go online. Under the Eastern Punitive Expedition's rankings, he posted 2 pictures. The first was a picture of a roasted earth dragon, and the second was a close-up of a roasted gray eagle's wings. At first, when these 2 photos were posted, people were still a little puzzled and confused because they only saw the barbecue pictures, not the actual bodies. Then, Chu Feng added a few more. It was as if a dam had been dug open, and the comm network was instantly stirred up by thousands of waves. In the photo, the black earth dragon's body was extremely huge, and its scales were flowing with black light. After it was killed, the flesh inside was sparkling and translucent, with the word dragon on it. It was extremely extraordinary. In another picture, the gray eagle's wings were as hard as metal, piercing through the rocks. Its corpse was lying on the ground, covered in blood. They had all been roasted and looked very fresh and tender, a rare delicacy. Heavens, these are the Earth Dragons and Gray Eagles on the Eastern Punitive Expedition's rankings. Their rankings can't be considered low, but they were actually roasted until their flesh was translucent and golden. Heavens, is this real? Oh heavens, what did I just see? Did the great God of Jerusalem really make a move? It's only been one night, and you're already hungry? Heavens, this is too crazy. Everyone, regardless of whether they were from the East or the West, was shocked. Last night, that fierce person was still saying that he had eaten too much, but this morning, he had already started roasting. Just how heaven-defying was this? His actions were too fast. 2 king-level entities had been killed and roasted just like that. This was truly flabbergasting. The crowd was wiping away their cold sweat. This person was simply a monster. He had actually done what he said, turning the Eastern Punitive Expedition's rankings into the gourmet rankings. Some were delighted, some were in awe, and some were cursing. This matter caused huge waves, and countless people were shocked and began to participate in the discussion. People felt that this fierce person was too unconventional, starting to eat without saying a word. How could the Eastern Punitive Expedition endure this? Those who had been killed were king-level experts. At this time, both the ordinary people and the corporate powers were even more curious. Just what was this fierce person's identity? Was he really a peerless expert from the holy city of Jerusalem? The Eastern Punitive Expedition was greatly shocked. This was extremely bad news for them. Xiao Na, where are you? The black dragon was alarmed. He immediately called Xiao Na and the giant dog, worried that they would be ambushed on their way to the Misty Valley. Unfortunately, it was all too late. The man and dog had long since been dealt with by Chu Feng. The black dragon, naturally, could not be contacted. His expression turned gloomy. Countless people were commenting on the rankings. The Earth Dragon and the Gray Eagle had been killed, causing the outside world to be in an uproar. This deity is too fierce. Who will be next? Is he really going to create a gourmet rankings? Great God of Jerusalem, I thank you on behalf of the East. Please come to Mount Kunlun as soon as possible. I believe the Black Dragon and the Arctic King will be even more delicious. I guarantee your satisfaction. Amidst the clamor on the internet, Chu Feng turned off his communicator and walked into the distance. All of a sudden, he saw a huge creature flying across the sky. It was very ostentatious, bringing with it a strong gust of wind as it flew close to the town and into the forest. The townspeople cried out in alarm. What was that? It was a huge beast. It was a silver bat over 10 meters long. It was carrying a group of people as it flew towards the mountains in the distance. It was completely unrestrained as it roamed through the human settlements. Some of the children were so frightened that they began to cry. Chu Feng halted his steps and looked back. Then, as if he had thought of something, he quickly turned around and dashed into the forest. He suspected that the group of vampires had arrived. With Chu Feng's speed, he could definitely catch up to them. Moreover, those people were not familiar with the area and had to search in order to find the Misty Valley. Thus, not long after, Chu Feng arrived ahead of them. However, those people were still circling around the mountain, constantly searching. Finally, they arrived and saw a person standing in the middle of the mountain. The silver bat whistled through the air and almost brushed past Chu Feng's head. Then, it soared into the sky. This was intentional. The person below, do you know how to get to the Misty Valley? Someone on the bat asked arrogantly. In fact, they would be able to see the Misty Valley if they advanced a little further. However, since they saw the person below, they naturally had to ask first. An Easterner. Interesting. Could he have come from the Misty Valley? The people on the silver bat all had blonde hair and blue eyes. Their skin was as fair as snow, as if they had not seen the sun for many years. However, they were all very handsome. Eastern mutants still dare to set foot on this land? Haven't we already fought our way to their door? Kunlun is about to fall, yet there are still people who dare to come here? Someone said with a smile. The people on the silver bat were very confident and arrogant. They lowered their heads and looked at the Easterner below. Vampires? Chu Feng raised his head and looked at them. He did not attack just now because he was afraid of killing the wrong person. You should call us the divine race. We have an ancient and noble bloodline. The blood flowing in your body is incomparably modeled compared to the divine race. A man corrected him. He called himself the divine race, ostentatious and conceited. Is that so? Chu Feng erupted with his strength, no longer concealing it. The dormant blood qi in his body was like a vast ocean, erupting with an astonishing aura. His body was glowing, and terrifying fluctuations covered the sky and earth, shaking the entire mountain forest. The people on top were all startled, especially the silver bat, which was shivering and almost fell down. "Are you courting death?" a young man shouted. However, the middle-aged man beside him pulled him back and told him to shut up. Then, he ordered the silver bat to quickly rise into the air. He had a premonition of impending danger and was somewhat afraid. However, it was already too late. After confirming their identities, Chu Feng did not want to waste any more words. He took out the scarlet flying knife. Puffed. The silver bat's head fell to the ground, cut off by a single slash of the sword. The huge corpse crashed down with a loud boom, causing the ground to tremble slightly. A total of 7 people fell down at the same time, looking very miserable. They were both shocked and angry. There were 7 blonde people, both male and female. Among them, one was a king-level expert, 2 were quasi-kings, and the other 4 were mutants of the awakened realm. Although they were humans, they considered themselves to be of the divine race and did not consider themselves to be of human descent. These were 7 vampires. "Who are you?" the middle-aged man asked after stabilizing himself. He had a good temperament and looked like a noble. He was dressed very formally, even a little old-fashioned. "Chu Feng." "What?" The middle-aged man cried out in alarm. He was a king-level expert, and he had also been paying attention to the recent changes. Naturally, he knew who Chu Feng was. This matter was too strange. A dead person had actually reappeared. This made him feel uneasy, and his previous arrogance had all disappeared. Consider yourself to be of a divine race? Even if you don't consider yourselves humans, you are still just vampires. Chu Feng looked at them. This person is very dangerous. He should have died in the Vatican, but he came out alive. The recent series of strange events might be related to him. "Retreat," the middle-aged man shouted. He was the second strongest among the vampires, and naturally, he knew many things. He was an expert second only to the old vampire king. Chu Feng did not want to waste time with him. He immediately took out the scarlet flying knife and used his spiritual art to kill the enemies. In a flash, the 4 awakened realm vampires all lost their heads, and their corpses lay on the ground. Chu Feng did not feel the slightest bit guilty, nor did he show any mercy. This group of people wanted to set foot on the land of the east and attack the Kunlun Mountains. They were invaders. "How dare you?" The middle-aged man was furious. His son was among the dead, and this made him furious. He turned into a shadow and pounced over, 2 fangs protruding from his mouth. He wanted to deal with Chu Feng with extreme speed. However, how many people could compete with Chu Feng in speed? Puffed. Chu Feng met the attack head-on. He broke the man's arm with 1 punch, and then landed a blow on the man's chin. The man's fangs shattered, and his whole body was sent flying. His chin was deformed and twisted. Puffed. The crimson flying sword spun and slashed, killing the other 2 quasi-kings. Then, the sword turned around and beheaded the king-level vampire. At this point, the vampires were all dead. They had been successfully intercepted and killed by Chu Feng. This is no longer the era of the 8-nation alliance invading the east. Chu Feng turned around and left, leaving behind a mess. With this, his plan was complete. The groups of people he had planned to kill had all been dealt with. Chu Feng decided to wait and see. If there were no more opportunities here, he would immediately return to Mount Kunlun to participate in the battle. In the evening, he yawned and woke up on a large bed. This was a 5-star hotel, and with his current status as an unregistered citizen, he naturally could not enter. However, he did not want to suffer and felt that he should live a more comfortable life. Thus, he could only use unconventional methods to enter the hotel. After washing up, Chu Feng ate some food and browsed the internet. The outside world was in an uproar. The Eastern Punitive Expedition's morale had suffered a heavy blow. The deaths of the Earth Dragon and the Gray Eagle had greatly affected them. "Don't let me find you, or I'll tear you to shreds." This was the Black Dragon King's roar, announcing to the world that he would avenge the Earth Dragon and the others. The Earth Dragon was one of his clansmen, and yet he had been roasted and eaten. To the Black Dragon King, this was a great humiliation. Someone was provoking and offending his dignity. "Don't talk nonsense if you have nothing to do." Chu Feng appeared once again, directly targeting the Black Dragon King with a post under the Eastern Punitive Expedition's rankings. In addition, he posted a picture of a giant dog being decapitated and roasted. This was an undisguised provocation, a challenge to the Crimson Dragon King. The taste of the giant dog was not bad, Chu Feng added at the back of the picture. At this moment, not to mention the Eastern Punitive Expedition, even the major powers of the world could not sit still. Who was this? Was it really an expert from Jerusalem? However, Jerusalem and the Eastern Punitive Expedition should not have any conflict of interest. It was impossible for them to fight to the death. Many people began to suspect that there was more to this than meets the eye. The Black Dragon King roared again and again, shaking Mount Kunlun. That winged lizard must be furious. On Mount Kunlun, the Black Yak grinned foolishly, rejoicing in the Black Yak's misfortune. Before long, Schiller opened his mouth and issued a warning. "I don't care who you are. You must be punished for your wanton slaughter in the Western world." First, there was a Vidus and a White Bear. Then there was the Earth Dragon and the Gray Falcon. And now, the giant dog was also dead. One after another, all caused by a single person. This was a huge blow to the Eastern Punitive Expedition. Your own lair has been destroyed, yet you are as anxious as a stray dog. You still have a nerve to open your mouth? Chu Feng retorted without the slightest fear. Furthermore, he posted another picture under the Eastern Punitive Expedition's rankings. It was a picture of Qiao Na being beheaded. She was from the Holy See. Schiller was furious. The others were dumbfounded, and a heated discussion ensued. "God, you're too powerful. You're going to rebuke anyone who warns you. You're even posting pictures of their beheaded subordinates. You're too mighty." In the East, a group of people was shouting. Be it the ordinary people, the corporations, or the great demons of Mount Kunlun, none of them could calm down. They were all astonished by this valiant fellow. Enough! The old vampire king stood out at the critical moment. He also issued a stern warning. Even if you're really from Jerusalem, you won't be able to escape the punishment of the Western King-level experts. Someone cried out in alarm. "Oh my God! Another powerhouse with 6 severed shackles has issued a warning to that god. God, will you be able to reveal more shocking news this time?" Chu Feng rubbed his chin and didn't reply immediately. These old fellows were indeed terrifying when they joined forces. Could the East withstand them? It can't be. The god isn't replying. Is he feeling a little guilty? Some people were discussing. They felt that this god had provoked too many experts, from the Arctic King to the Black Dragon, and then to Schiller and the old Vampire King. It was likely that he would have to restrain himself. "Vampire, old bat, shut up." However, Chu Feng very quickly gave such a reply, following which he posted the pictures of the beheaded 7 vampires. In an ancient castle in England, when the old vampire saw this, his golden hair was like a flame emitting a blazing light. He jumped up. The outside world was in an uproar. This god was too ferocious and mighty. Whoever dared to threaten him would immediately post pictures. Just how many king-level entities had he killed? It was simply frightening. Who's still not convinced? This time, Chu Feng took the initiative to provoke them. Whoever warned him, he would immediately slap them in the face. In his hands were pictures of the Golden Lion King, the Dole King, and the Vulture King. Some had been roasted, some had been boiled, and some had been thrown away. Does the old Lion King dare to speak? He's probably the only one who hasn't spoken yet. This god is so ostentatious and conceited. Could it be that he has even more shocking news? Chapter 183. The elder Lion King stood out with unyielding words, declaring that he would kill this man if he were to encounter him. He also declared that he would show no mercy no matter where this person came from. No matter what his identity was, he would kill him immediately. It was useless no matter who begged for mercy. Obviously, he was expressing his determination. Even if this person came from the holy city of Jerusalem, he would kill him to the end. How many people dare to be so tyrannical and look down on the holy city? That was the holy land of the three sects. Only the elder Lion King would dare to be so unyielding because he was truly fearless. He was one of the first to sever his sixth shackle and possessed terrifying strength. He had always been at the forefront of evolution and was the closest to becoming an unrivaled king. Both the East and the West were shaken. Jerusalem, which had always been calm, suddenly spoke up. That was because the people there believed that the elder Lion King was looking down on the holy city. They declared that they might as well come and fight. The people felt dizzy. Even Jerusalem was involved. It can't be. Is this deity really from Jerusalem? The people were shocked. In the past 2 days, everyone had been suspicious and felt that something was wrong. They believed that Jerusalem and the Eastern Punitive Expedition had no conflict of interest, and this deity was continuously killing the king-level experts of the Eastern Punitive Expedition. Moreover, he was roasting the meat until it was golden brown and eating it as if it was food. This was a deadly offense. After some analysis, the people felt that this was not normal. There was no need for Jerusalem to wade into these muddy waters, and there was no need for them to shed all pretenses of cordiality with the Eastern Punitive Expedition. Therefore, some people had come to the conclusion that this person had another identity. But now, someone from Jerusalem had stepped forward. What was the meaning of this? He was targeting the old lion. Everyone was baffled. Could it be that this ferocious person was really someone from the holy city? If that was the case, then the situation had become even more complicated. A single misstep could lead to a multi-party war. Even Schiller, the Black Dragon, and the Arctic King could no longer sit still. If Jerusalem was really involved, then what was the point of talking about the Eastern Punitive Expedition? The backyard was on fire. Chu Feng was speechless. He had wanted to rebuke the elder Lion King, but who would have thought that someone from Jerusalem would step forward and cause such chaos? He was happy to watch the show and waited for the next part. On this day, Schiller finally got in touch with a powerhouse from Jerusalem. In truth, he had been working hard for the past few days and had finally gotten some results. This so-called fierce person isn't an expert from Jerusalem. Under Schiller's questioning, the powerhouse clearly stated that it had nothing to do with them. When this news spread, it was earth-shattering. Be it the East or the West, it caused a huge commotion, causing all the major powers to be unable to sit still. This caused Chu Feng to feel quite disappointed. Jerusalem was proud of himself and hadn't explained anything before. But now, he wasn't willing to take the blame for someone else and directly explain the situation. We must find out who it is. The Black Dragon King was seething with anger, but he also heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the unfathomable holy city was not involved, everything would be fine. The Eastern Punitive Expedition was enraged. They had reason to believe that this person was most likely from the East. Otherwise, why would he do such a thing? They wanted to mess up their rear. Moreover, they suspected that even the flattening of the Vatican City might have been done by this person. This was truly a bit terrifying, causing them to feel a wave of horror. Behind the Eastern Punitive Expedition, there was a terrifying existence glaring at them like a tiger watching its prey. As for the East, needless to say, the major corporations and the beast race were in an uproar. They too believed that this was an attack by an Eastern expert. Is he trying to defy the heavens? Is this brother from our side killing his way over alone? What kind of identity does he have to be able to cause such a ruckus by himself? Could he be someone like the Peacock King or the Wudong Grandmaster? The East was in an uproar as people began to speculate. This ferocious person was taking the initiative to attack. This made people feel quite comfortable. A single person daring to cause such a ruckus in the West and cause the Eastern punitive expedition to be uneasy was truly extraordinary. This kind of shady person won't amount to anything. He's not worth mentioning. Schiller stood out. Even someone as scheming as him had been angered. Everything had been going wrong recently. Chu Feng ridiculed. You flaunt that you're from the Holy See and call yourself the Last Knight. Look at what you've done. You set up a sinister assassination plot, killed numerous kings, and piled up mountains of corpses in the Vatican. Are you even fit to talk about righteousness? At this point, the outside world could more or less guess what had happened at the Vatican. The major powers had long since come to a conclusion. However, the winner was always right. Now, Schiller, the Black Dragon, and the others had arrived with great momentum. They had formed an alliance with the Yoga Master Fanlin, the Elder Lion King, and the Vampire King, forming an invincible force. Ordinary races didn't dare to provoke them or seek revenge. Experts with 6 severed shackles could look down on the other kings with disdain. There were 6 of them. Who would be able to contend against them if they joined forces? They would be able to crush them all. Therefore, the people could only look forward to the battle at Mount Kunlun. They hoped that they could block the Eastern punitive expedition and deal them a heavy blow. Otherwise, if they were allowed to take over Mount Kunlun, the consequences would be unimaginable. They would become a force that would engulf the entire world. Chu Feng's words caused great waves in the West. People had acknowledged Schiller in the past, but they hated the Black Dragon to the bone. They had always wanted to get rid of him because this Black Dragon had massacred more than one city. On the same day, the West was shaken. The Elder Lion King had arrived and met up with the Vampire King. The two of them were going to march towards the east together. Some people in the West really wanted to bombard them with missiles, but they were afraid that their divine instincts were too sharp and would allow them to evade. Even the various countries didn't dare to provoke these creatures with 6 severed shackles. See you at Mount Kunlun. The Elder Lion King was a man of action. He didn't speak much, but his words had terrifying, destructive power that needed to be put into action. Chu Feng appeared and challenged the Elder Lion King. Old man, do you really think you're unrivaled under the heavens? However, lion meat is indeed exceptionally delicious and unrivaled on the gourmet rankings. Some people were suspicious. What did this mean? Had he eaten lion meat before? In the past, the Elder Lion King had threatened and warned him that he would kill him on sight. However, this fierce man didn't believe him and declared that he wanted to eat lion meat. Now, was he fulfilling his promise? Everyone believed that no one could eat the Elder Lion King. Could it be that something had happened to the other Lion King? However, the other Lion King was also known to be undefeated at the same level. He was insanely ferocious and would be difficult to kill. In truth, even with so many king-level entities dead, they still couldn't compare to a single Golden Lion King. What do you mean? The Elder Lion King could no longer sit still. He had tried to contact the Golden Lion King, but received no response. This made him feel uneasy. This day was destined to be a chaotic one. Chu Feng posted the picture of the Golden Lion King. It was as if a nuclear bomb had gone off and shocked the East and the West. Following which, the picture of the Golden Lion King was also posted. Oh God, the peerless Golden Lion King has died. Has he also become the fierce man's food? This world has gone crazy. Some people couldn't believe it. The illustrious Golden Lion King had actually been roasted. This was an earth-shattering event. His strength and status alone were greater than all the other king-level entities added together. Following which, the Dole King and Vulture King were also exposed. One had been roasted while the other had been thrown away in disgust. Everyone was flabbergasted. This turned into a tempest that shook the entire world. Just how many king-level entities had this fierce man killed? People were counting with their fingers. If they didn't count, they wouldn't know, but if they did, they would be shocked out of their wits. Avidu's White Bear, the Golden Lion King, the Dole King, the Vulture King. Everyone was dizzy and trembling in disbelief. So many king-level entities had been killed. Such a battle record shook the entire world. After careful calculation, it was suffocating. This battle record was too glorious, shaking the entire human society and causing tsunamis. Ah, the Elder Lion King's roar shook the entire continent. He had gone berserk. Large patches of forest were blasted apart. Amidst the Elder Lion King's roar, towering ancient trees were blasted apart. Boulders weighing thousands of kilograms flew high into the sky before exploding. This scene was extremely terrifying. If this had happened in a city, the consequences would have been unthinkable. There would have been countless casualties. This was a peerless sound technique. Lion's roar. The Elder Lion King and the Vampire King rushed through the night towards the misty canyon in Greece. A bird king carried them along at lightning speed, even faster than an airplane. Very soon, Chu Feng, who had been called a demonic man by the Western world's king-level entities, ascended to the throne of the must-kill list. Many people called him a deity or a fierce man, but in the eyes of the Elder Lion King and the Black Dragon King, he was a demon. This list was personally created by Schiller. It could be said that this list was created specifically for the demonic man. Anyone who could kill this demonic man would obtain the opportunity to become a peerless expert. They made it clear that as long as they could provide valuable clues, they would be able to follow the Black Dragon and the Elder Lion King into the home of myriad gods and obtain the same opportunity to pick the divine fruits. This caused a huge commotion. Chu Feng said disdainfully, "Using other people's divine fruits as a reward, you guys are truly bandits." On the same day, Chu Feng's gourmet rankings were released. It completely overturned the Eastern Punitive Expedition's combat strength rankings and smeared the latter's reputation to the extreme. This list was too crazy. It was filled with king-level entities that he had eaten. There were actually so many of them at a glance. People from both the East and the West were stunned. At the top of the gourmet rankings was the Golden Lion King. Behind it was Chu Feng's review, saying that its meat was fresh and tasty. I look forward to the Black Dragon and the Arctic King replacing the Golden Lion King. Such an evaluation was a challenge and provocation. People were shocked to find that this fierce man's post was somewhat different. It was actually written in Eastern language. This was equivalent to confirming that he was from the East. Previously, everything was just speculation. But now, the true culprit had revealed himself. He was indeed an Easterner. How could people not be shocked? Following that, a storm erupted. The crazed gourmet rankings swept the world and became the headlines of every country. A single person had killed and eaten so many king-level entities. Just the thought of it was enough to make people dumbstruck. Deity, will you not dare to eat? Ferocious beyond belief. Fierce man, reveal your identity. Who the hell are you? People from all over the world were shocked, and heated discussions broke out. Chu Feng calculated the time and found that the Elder Lion King's group was about to set foot on the east. The decisive battle of Mount Kunlun was imminent, and it was time for him to make a decision. Should he continue his operation in the west or rush back to join the battle? He began to contact Yellow Cattle and the Black Yak. They should have awakened by now and wanted to understand the situation from them. Mount Kunlun. Yellow Cattle and the Black Yak were not in high spirits these days because Chu Feng's death had caused them great disappointment. Chu Feng had lured away the powerful enemies, giving the two an opportunity to escape. Chapter 184. Ever since Mount Kunlun had been revived, it was completely different from before. The peaks were verdant and the valleys were green. Some of the peaks had silver waterfalls that were thousands of meters long. The scenery was pleasing to the eye, magnificent yet beautiful. Yellow Cattle was in low spirits. He and the Black Yak were blaming themselves. The three of them had gone to the Vatican together, but only two of them had returned. Chu Feng had died in a foreign land. It seemed weak, and its voice was very soft. This surprised Chu Feng, who was far away in Greece, but he soon understood what was going on. Who are you? Say something. Yellow Cattle was getting impatient. I'm a god, Chu Feng said with a smile. In a split second, Yellow Ox's eyes widened and its ears pricked up. It wanted to hear more clearly. What's going on? Why are you so nervous? The black yak looked at him suspiciously. I think there's something wrong with my hearing, Yellow Cattle mumbled. He suspected that he had heard wrongly. What are you two waiting for? Didn't you hear this god's voice? Chu Feng raised his voice and shouted. Wait a minute. Why does it sound like that, Brad? The black yak's ears perked up, and he rushed forward to look at the communicator. The caller ID showed that it was an unknown number. Chu Feng's own communicator had long since been destroyed during the battle. This was a temporary replacement from abroad. The two oxen had also been destroyed in the Western War. However, they had gone through some procedures after returning and had used their original numbers. Yellow Cattle, Old Black, have you become stupid? Chu Feng's voice was so loud that it caused the two oxen's ears to ring. They looked at each other in dismay. They were truly dumbfounded. This was Chu Feng. Wasn't he dead? The West had already announced that Schiller was a shrewd and ruthless person. He wouldn't make any mistakes. However, they had really heard Chu Feng's voice just now. Yellow Cattle, Old Black, have your heads been kicked by a donkey? Have you forgotten about me? Chu Feng was dissatisfied. You are the stupid one. Your head has been kicked by a donkey, cried the Yellow Cattle, who had finally come to his senses. Brat, you're really something. You've been dead for a few days, but you can still come back to life. Are you trying to scare us to death? The black yak cried out strangely. Although he was complaining, his face was full of excitement and agitation. At this moment, the two oxen jumped up. In the past few days, the two oxen had been extremely depressed. Although their strength had increased by leaps and bounds, and they had become the cream of the crop amongst king-level entities, they weren't happy at all. They believed that Chu Feng had traded his life for this. How could I die? I've been living quite comfortably, Chu Feng chuckled. Ha ha. The black yak's maniacal laughter shook the entire mountain peak. Even the verdant, ancient pine trees were swaying along with him. Even the Ox King Palace not far away was shaking. One could see just how frightening his current strength was. In the distance, a group of beast race experts looked at each other in dismay. They thought that the Ox King was acting up again. Recently, he had been going crazy from time to time because of the death of his brother. Yellow Cattle was also laughing, but not as exaggeratedly. His eyes emitted a resplendent radiance as the haze in his heart was swept away. He was now completely relaxed. Old Ox, are you acting up again? Stop crying. The decisive battle is about to begin. When the time comes, killing a few more enemies will be enough to avenge Brother Chu. On a distant mountain peak, a horse king shouted. It was still bald, shiny as Zhang Tall, extremely valiant. Bullshasters T, I'm just happy. Just you wait. Before long, the whole world will be shaken, huh? The black yak laughed maniacally. After finding out that Chu Feng wasn't dead, he and the Yellow Cattle's eyes darted around as they thought of many things. These two oxen weren't simple people. They were especially scheming. Chu Feng wasn't dead, and Europe hadn't been peaceful recently. A series of shocking events had occurred, and they wouldn't believe that Chu Feng had nothing to do with it, even if they were beaten to death. The two of them were extremely quick-witted. Almost immediately, they guessed that many of these events were done by Chu Feng. Brother, where are you? Come back quickly. We'll drink and celebrate. The black yak's heart was on fire. He couldn't wait for Chu Feng to appear immediately and ask him about the details. I'm in Greece. I was just about to ask you about the situation there. Should I stay here or return to participate in the battle at Mount Kunlun? Chu Feng said. After hearing his words, the two oxen were certain that he was the culprit. Come back. We won't be at ease if you stay there alone. Yellow Cattle urged. Europe was, after all, Schiller's territory. If that old man were to discover Chu Feng, he would undoubtedly die. Right, come back quickly. Don't delay. We need you to participate in the battle here. The black yak added. After experiencing death once, he didn't want any more accidents to happen. At the same time, the two oxen couldn't hold it in any longer. They had too many questions in their hearts and wanted to know what had happened. What? You're the one who killed the Vidus and roasted the white bear? But how did you end up in Jerusalem? The two oxen believed that the events in Europe were related to Chu Feng, but the Middle East Jerusalem incident was also his doing. It was a bit strange. I was chased into the sea and almost died. I was swallowed by a whale king and mysteriously ended up on the southeastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Chu Feng didn't hide anything and explained everything in detail. The two oxen were overwhelmed with emotions. They sighed inwardly. Chu Feng had indeed encountered a life and death crisis. Fortunately, he had survived. "Brother, you're the one who created the gourmet rankings, right?" The black yak asked excitedly. That was because the only thing that made him and Yellow Ox happy these past 2 days was watching those king-level enemies being roasted alive. It really made them cry out in joy. "Of course it's me. Haha, this is too satisfying. I'm drooling. If I had known it was you, I would have gone over to Freeload for food." The black yak grinned. He was actually thinking about these things. It was a bit strange and regretful that he didn't go over to Freeload for food. Yellow Cattle's expression was odd. The deity and ferocious person who had gone crazy in the outside world was actually their brother. This was truly dumbfounding. Who would believe it if they told others? "This is too satisfying. Even that lion was cooked by you." Thinking back to how arrogant it was back at the Vatican, I really want to beat it up. "Good kill." The black yak sighed in admiration. They contacted Chu Feng and inquired about the details, hoping that he would return as soon as possible. "Brother, after you return, we'll help you update the gourmet rankings." The two oxen were very excited. This brother of theirs had done something earth-shattering in Europe. This made them feel extremely carefree. At the same time, they were also very regretful that they weren't able to go with Chu Feng. It would have been even better if they could have participated personally. The black yak said, "Brother, the outside world is now calling you a deity and a ferocious person. If your identity is exposed, the outside world will probably explode. It'll be a complete mess." Even Yellow Cattle nodded and said, "Right now, everyone thinks you're dead. If you suddenly return, everyone will be dumbfounded." "Do you want me to reveal my identity right now?" "I can't help it. I really want to go out and roar." The black yak was extremely excited. Recently, he and Yellow Cattle had been extremely depressed. Only now did they feel the pores on their bodies relax. They were so excited that they wanted to roar and roar. This was especially true because the things Chu Feng had done were too shocking. He really wanted to go out and see how the Eastern Punitive Expedition would react. He reckoned they would be stomping their feet in anger. Of course, they would also be shocked silly. It was easy to imagine that all the major powers would be dumbfounded. No one would have thought that a dead person would come back to life and do such earth-shattering things. Don't announce it yet. We'll talk about it after I return." Chu Feng stopped him. Yellow Cattle also stared at the black yak and said, "Now that it's exposed, won't those Western King-level entities go crazy? They'd rather not attack Mount Kunlun than encircle Chu Feng. The Black Dragon and the Arctic King have long since become envious." The black yak was embarrassed. He was so engrossed in his joy that he had almost forgotten that Chu Feng had provoked these experts with 6 severed shackles. "All right, the Vatican has been flattened by nuclear missiles. Do you know what happened?" The black yak probed. "I did it," Chu Feng admitted calmly. He had almost forgotten about this matter. The two oxen's eyes went round as they looked at each other in dismay. This was also done by him. The gourmet rankings were already shocking enough, but the Vatican being flattened was also shocking. It shook the entire world. If news of who did it got out, the impact would be even greater. "Brother, is there anything else you haven't told me? Tell me all at once, lest you scare me from time to time." "That's all." Chu Feng then asked, "How many severed shackles have you guys severed?" At the mention of this, the black yak immediately patted his chest. He had already severed 5 shackles and was a king-level expert, second only to the Elder Lion King and the Peacock King. Yellow Cattle had severed 4 shackles, and his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. One had to know that Yellow Cattle, like Chu Feng, had only severed 1 shackle. The black yak, on the other hand, had just severed 3 shackles. This time, their strength had increased explosively. Chu Feng was dumbfounded. These 2 oxen were indeed valiant. They had both become great experts. The myriad spirit blood medicine was extremely astonishing. He had obtained one flower bud while the 2 oxen had obtained 2 each. Naturally, the effect redoubled. It was just that the amount of energy required to sever the 4th and 5th shackles was vastly different. The further one went, the more difficult it became. That was why the flower bud was more effective on yellow ox than on the black yak. Since you two have advanced by leaps and bounds, I won't hold back anymore. I'm also preparing to sever my 4th shackle, Chu Feng said. He wanted to try to make the seed in the stone box germinate. He wanted to use the mysterious pollen to evolve and sever his 4th shackle. Don't rush. Yellow Cattle stopped him. He told him that it was best to come back and participate in the Battle of Mount Kunlun first before breaking through. At present, Yellow Cattle and the Black Yak were facing some problems. Their breakthroughs were fierce, but they were somewhat unstable. That was because they had severed too many shackles in a short period of time. Yellow Cattle had told Chu Feng before that there were too many opportunities on the recovering earth. 1 year of cultivation here was equivalent to 10 years or even 100 years in other worlds. This wasn't just empty words. However, breaking through 2 or 3 levels at a time like they were doing now was too much. Now, Yellow Cattle and the Black Yak were doing their best to resolve the hidden dangers. Otherwise, their Tao foundations might become unstable and cause big problems in the future. However, Yellow Cattle also admitted that Chu Feng had fought many battles in Europe and killed many king-level entities. Perhaps he had already stabilized his realm. In any case, he suggested that Chu Feng return to Mount Kunlun first and see how things went. Chu Feng nodded. He had severed 2 shackles in succession and evolved at a godly speed. It was only right for him to accumulate some experience. However, he felt that there were no major problems. The battle with the Golden Lion King could be considered a life or death battle. After that, he felt that his spiritual energy had risen to its peak. Now, he was full of energy without any hidden dangers. His Tao foundations were stable. I'll go back to Mount Kunlun to break through and then participate in the final battle. Chu Feng muttered to himself. The conversation had long since ended, but Chu Feng didn't immediately set off. He was a bit worried that the red crystals wouldn't be enough and that the seed wouldn't be able to germinate. That was because the seed was also constantly evolving. Every time it revived, it would require even higher quality mutant soil. His target was the Vatican. Chu Feng was concerned about the red crystals there. Last time, he was in too much of a hurry and didn't have enough time to collect them. Although the place had been flattened, he believed that the underground boundary was still intact. Moreover, he knew that there was a crack in the boundary there that he could enter. Chu Feng snuck onto a plane and landed in Italy a day later. He then went to the Vatican and once again arrived at this sacred land. However, this place was not sacred at all. Broken walls and rubble were everywhere. Only a majestic cathedral was left standing. Everything else had been destroyed. The radiation in this area was too severe. It would be difficult for those below the king level to endure. However, this kind of terrifying radiation had no effect on Chu Feng. His body was extremely resilient and didn't fear radiation. Moreover, there was a mysterious energy protecting his body. Chu Feng strolled around. This place was completely barren. Not a single person could be seen. The entire medicinal garden had been turned into a huge pit. He used his flying sword to dig into the ground. Finally, he entered the ground and searched carefully. Once again, he found the boundary and began to dig, searching for the red crystals. This was originally mutant soil, but according to Yellow Cattle, it had been dyed with the blood essence of a powerful being. It was much more effective than ordinary mutant soil. The myriad spirit blood medicine has dried up. In fact, Chu Feng had been thinking about the colorful little tree when he came here. But now, he found that it had withered. Last time, the nuclear bombardment had destroyed the vitality of the medicinal garden. The ancient tree's roots were protected by the boundary and wouldn't be destroyed. However, it wouldn't be able to grow on the ground for a while. As a result, the colorful little tree had withered underground and turned into dust at the slightest touch. What a pity, Chu Feng sighed. At the same time, he knew that Schiller must be furious. All his efforts had gone to waste. Chu Feng no longer paid him any attention and continued to search for the red crystals. Half a day later, he left in satisfaction. He had found a large pile of crystals, even more than the last time. His bag was as tall as a man. Chu Feng stood amidst the ruins and took a few pictures as a souvenir. At first, he had wanted to loot the Black Dragon's lair, but he decided against it after some thought. A long night might bring trouble. It was better to return to Mount Kunlun as soon as possible after collecting enough red crystals. Additionally, the Black Dragon, the Arctic King, and the others had probably been alerted by his bombardment of the Vatican. They had probably ordered their clansmen to leave their lair and take away all the valuable items. Finally, Chu Feng returned to Greece without a hitch. He dug out the red crystals he had buried earlier and set off on his return journey. Chu Feng was extremely cautious when he arrived at the Misty Valley. He was afraid that someone like Schiller would be guarding this place. After all, he had intercepted and killed several groups of experts here. Apparently, he was overthinking things. At present, a peerless expert with 6 severed shackles wouldn't have the time to guard a single passage. In truth, he wasn't afraid, even if he were to encounter such a character. He was confident that his current speed wouldn't be any slower than the Elder Lion King and the Arctic King. Finally, Chu Feng set foot on the eastern land. "I'm back," he roared. During this period of time, everyone in the outside world thought that he had died. Now, he had officially returned. Standing on the eastern land, Chu Feng called a few people as he walked, informing them that he was safe and had returned alive. Apart from Linoi, Lu Tong, Ouyang Qing, and Yi Qingru were all astonished. Linoi stood on the shore of the eastern sea with a smile. She had long since suspected that Chu Feng wasn't dead. On this day, Lu Tong couldn't help but cry out in excitement at the hollow jade temple, accidentally tearing off his beard. "Hello!" This was the howl of the clairvoyant, clairaudient, and the others. However, these people didn't dare make a sound. After all, Chu Feng hadn't returned to Mount Kunlun yet. They were afraid that something might have happened to him along the way. They had all guessed that the series of events in the West was most likely Chu Feng's doing. "Mount Kunlun, I'm back. I'm going to break through here and sever my 4th shackle. Then I'll participate in the final battle." Chu Feng let out a loud cry as he quickened his pace. Monthly votes. It's the end of the month. Everyone, please cast your last monthly votes. Chapter 185. After leaving the basin of Xinjiang, Chu Feng became cautious. It would be troublesome if he were to encounter the Eastern Punitive Expedition. Being alone in the wilderness would only bode ill for him. Numerous poplar trees grew in the desert. They were extremely resistant to drought and possessed a tenacious vitality. Their trunks were upright, and their leaves were either dark green or golden yellow. When combined together, they exuded the vigor of life as well as the vicissitudes of life. Chu Feng carried a large bag of red crystals as he walked through the desert. He thought of many things. When he first came to the western region, he had seen the blue spider lilies. They bloomed in an instant and disappeared in an instant. It was extremely demonic. He had always wondered if the overwhelming number of blue petals had any effect on him. He had once asked Yellow Cattle if the flower's pollen could promote the evolution of a human body. Yellow Cattle frowned and said that it was an extremely strange flower and that it would be difficult to predict its fate after encountering it. Yellow Cattle speculated that although the sea of blue flowers seemed to blot out the sky and cover the earth, there was actually only one ancient flower. Its roots were buried in the depths of the desert. Chu Feng had seen the strange phenomenon caused by the flower's initial awakening after the upheaval. This flower was extremely mysterious and abnormally frightening. Yellow Cattle was very apprehensive and frankly said that even he did not know the true root of this flower. According to him, the blue spider lilies were very likely related to a certain sage. He would need to return to the world it came from and carefully read through the ancient texts in order to understand. The scorching sun made the desert as hot as an oven. Chu Feng utilized his divine feat. Although he did not deliberately increase his speed, he was still extremely fast. Every step he took caused him to disappear from his original location and reappear in a distant place. Finally, he left the desert and gradually entered the mountainous region. This allowed Chu Feng to let out a long sigh of relief. It would not be easy to be discovered in the forest. He began a long and arduous journey. Along the way, he kept trying to subdue a ferocious bird. Otherwise, he would not be able to do so, no matter how fast he was, due to the undulating mountain ridges. Chu Feng was very unlucky. Not to mention ferocious birds, he did not even encounter ordinary beast species. He learned from a wild wolf that when the Eastern Punitive Expedition passed through, some of the stronger bee species were conscripted to follow them. Those who dared to disobey were all killed. Along the way, many beasts fled after hearing the news. Chu Feng was extremely frustrated. He wanted to find a ferocious bird to carry him back to Kunlun, but it was not possible. He could only rely on himself to run. If I had known, I would have left the Gray Eagle King or the Vulture King alive as mounts. In the end, his clothes were ragged, his hair was disheveled, and his face was dirty. He ran to Mount Kunlun on his own. He cursed incessantly in his heart. I'll take it as consolidating my cultivation. Along the way, he kept running at top speed like a supersonic flying machine. Along the way, he bombarded everything in his way, crushing the hilltops and valleys. It was a terrifying scene. Chu Feng gave it his all. Every time, he would endure until his blood boiled and his whole body was scalding hot. Only when he could no longer bear it would he slow down. Therefore, this journey could be considered as cultivation. Even at night, he did not rest much. I'm finally back. Tens of li away, he discovered the Eastern Punitive Expedition. He cautiously avoided them and took a detour into the Kunlun Mountains. Stop. Today was an unusual period and security was tight. The experts of Mount Kunlun took turns to be on guard. Even the entrance to the mountain was overseen by a king-level entity. If the situation went awry, all the Beast Kings would rush over with a loud whistle. Some of the Beast Kings had taken human form and were armed with all sorts of weapons. Cold gleams flickered in their eyes as they eyed the area like a tiger watching its prey. Who are you? Even the king-level entity overseeing this place was alarmed and had rushed over personally. It was a middle-aged man with a large horn growing out of his head. His eyes gleamed with electricity as he stared at the mountain pass. Chu Feng was overjoyed when he saw him. Wasn't this the Kairu King? The horn he had cut off had grown back so quickly. It's me. Chu Feng's current appearance was truly too miserable. His clothes were in tatters, and his hair was disheveled and his face dirty. His entire body was covered in dust. His face was covered in sweat and dirt, forming a large stain. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to recognize him. The Kairu King stared at him and took a few steps back. He was shocked out of his wits. He would never have thought that it would be him. Wasn't this demon king already dead? Aren't you Shu? Chu Feng signaled to the Kairu King and walked over in large strides. The Kairu King had a shadow in his heart. Last time, he had been tormented miserably and had to recuperate for many days to recover. Now that he had seen Demon King Chu come back from the dead, his emotions were complicated. Guard the mountain pass well. Sound the alarm immediately. If anything happens, the Kairu King berated the Beast Kings. He personally led Chu Feng into the mountains. He was anxious and worried as he asked Chu Feng about his situation. The outside world was saying that he had died at the Vatican. We'll talk about this later. Chu Feng told him not to leak the news and to go to the Ox King Palace first. He wanted to see the two oxen first. He's definitely up to no good. The Kairu King cursed silently. At the same time, he thought of many things. This Demon King's disappearance for a long time was too abnormal. According to his character, it was impossible for him to not retaliate after suffering such a great loss at the Vatican. At this point, the Kairu King's eyes went wide as he shivered. He was secretly shocked. It couldn't be, right? Could it be that the recent commotion in Europe was caused by this fellow? His hair stood on end. He decided that he would never harbor any enmity towards this demon king again. This fellow was simply too terrifying. He was practically a human demon. On top of the majestic mountain stood a majestic palace. This was the Ox King Palace. The spiritual energy on the mountain was dense, and clear springs gurgled about. The trees on the mountain were sparkling and translucent, with bright red fruits hanging from them. "Ah, brother, you've returned. Why didn't you inform us?" The black yak let out an odd cry and rushed over. Chu Feng, yellow cattle, also ran over. They had all transformed into human forms and were passionate and excited. This period of time could be considered a life and death separation. The two oxen had thought that he had died and felt guilty for a long time. "Haha, it's good that you're back. But why are you in such a sorry state?" The black yak laughed. "Why don't you try running 20 or 30,000 kilometers day and night?" Chu Feng said unhappily. The key was that he would often run in the wrong direction and needed to be corrected. The two oxen had a guest, so this person also came over. When he saw that it was Chu Feng, his mouth opened wide as if he had seen a ghost. It was the black bear. Back then, when Chu Feng came to Mount Kunlun, it was this black bear who had accompanied him in a giant silver bird. The black bear was shocked. He looked at the resurrected Chu Feng and, without a word, turned around and ran to the side to talk to someone. Chu Feng was speechless. He thought that this old bear was going to show some affection and curry favor with him. Who would have thought that it would be such a reaction? The black bear felt uneasy and immediately called his grandson Xiong Kuin's communicator. He roared, "Bear cub, you didn't trick your father and grandfather this time, did you?" Xiong Kuin, who was far away in Shantian, was dumbfounded. What was wrong with this old man? He was roaring at him indiscriminately. His eardrums were about to rupture. "Grandpa, what happened?" Xiong Kuin asked cautiously. The black bear lowered his voice and said, "You haven't been cursing Demon King Chu outside recently, have you?" In the distance, Chu Feng's hearing was exceptionally sharp. He immediately heard what the black bear said and was immediately speechless. He really wanted to say, "Black bear, your grandpa." In Shantian, Xiong Kuin was baffled. Previously, he had wanted to curse Chu Feng to make himself feel better because he had been suppressed so miserably back then. But in the end, he hesitated because he was affected by Hu Sheng and did not dare to curse unrestrainedly. At the same time, he was afraid that the two oxen on Mount Kunlun would cause trouble for his grandfather. "No, I didn't say anything this time. What's wrong? Isn't he dead?" Xiong Kuin asked. "That's for the best. Shut your mouth and don't speak ill of King Chu in the future." The elder bear warned sternly before hanging up. In Shantian, Xiong Kuin was petrified. His group of scoundrels were puzzled and asked him what was going on. "Something's not right." Xiong Kuin looked like a burly man, but he was no fool. After pondering over his grandfather's words, he trembled and became suspicious. When Hu Sheng, Lu Qing, and the others understood what was going on, they were all scared out of their wits. They looked at each other in dismay and could not believe it. They were all scared silly. On that day, there was a rumor going around in Shantian that Demon King Chu might not be dead. Where did this news come from? How laughable. The Vatican has already confirmed that he's dead. How can anyone say he's still alive? The peacock lineage and the ash wolf tribe were all laughing at the news. He's still alive? Jiang Luoshin was shocked, and her eyes went wide. That's impossible. There's already news that he died in the West. How can he be alive now? It must be a rumor. Xia Qinyu shook her head. The major powers were also skeptical after hearing this news because there was no basis for it. At Mount Kunlun, the black bear was relieved after talking to his grandson Xiong Kuin. Full of confidence, he rushed towards Chu Feng with a big smile and gave him a bear hug while saying all kinds of auspicious words. One who survives a great calamity is bound to have good fortune later on. Brother Chu is destined to become a saint ancestor. From now on, we'll be relying on brother's guidance. The black bear was cordial to the point of numbness. He had officially entered Mount Kunlun and became one of them. It could be said that he had no choice because he was too close to Mount Kunlun and had to obey. From now on, this would be his own mountain. Now, he was tied to the war chariot that was Mount Kunlun. If he won, he would gain many benefits. If he lost, he would be in a miserable state. Chu Feng's return alarmed the various kings. Before long, a group of kings had rushed to the Ox King Palace. After seeing him with their own eyes, they were all shocked. The Horse King was a bald man over 3 meters tall. He laughed loudly and said, "I knew Brother Chu wasn't someone who died young. You're blessed with great fortune and great fortune. You're a good match for my daughter." The group roared with laughter at the mention of his daughter. Chu Feng was helpless. "Brother Chu, what's the situation? Tell us." A green-haired beauty dressed in a palace dress walked over gracefully. Her skin was fair and supple, and her eyes were full of life. She was the Weaver King of the Silken Cave. The group of kings from Mount Kunlun inquired. Chu Feng couldn't hide it from them, so he simply explained what had happened. After a long while, there was still silence. Everyone was shocked and drew in a breath of cold air. During this period of time, they had been applauding and praising the fierce man who had brought disaster to the West. Who would have thought that it was actually Chu Feng? One earth-shattering event after another challenged everyone's mental fortitude. "Everyone, don't reveal my brother's situation for the time being. Let's stabilize the situation first," the Black Yak warned. This was a decision he had made after discussing with Yellow Cattle and Chu Feng. That was because a great battle was imminent. If they were to directly reveal that Chu Feng was the mysterious man who had wreaked havoc in the West, it would inevitably cause a huge storm. At that time, the Elder Lion King, the Black Dragon King, the Old Vampire King, and a group of terrifying experts with 6 severed shackles would probably be envious. They would all set their sights on him and find a way to kill him first. "We won't have to be afraid after we get rid of those old monsters," Yellow Cattle said. "Very well." The Mastiff King nodded. He was a peerless expert with 6 severed shackles. His words carried great weight in Mount Kunlun. After all the kings had dispersed, Chu Feng immediately asked Yellow Cattle to help him check if his realm was stable and if there were any problems. "Very stable." Yellow Cattle was astonished. He could only attribute it to Chu Feng's experience in the West, consolidating the results of his evolution. "Very good. Then I'm relieved." Chu Feng was delighted. He was ready to plant that seed and evolve once again. That night, a piece of news shook the world. It was said that the Elder Lion King and the Vampire King were observing the terrain near Mount Kunlun. They were preparing for the decisive battle. At the same time, another piece of news spread out. The Indian yoga master Fanlin had long since arrived at Mount Kunlun. He had been continuously cultivating for the past 2 days, allowing his strength to rise to the highest level. Following that, another piece of news shocked everyone. Schiller had actually set off and was about to arrive at Mount Kunlun. Chapter 186. Schiller, this old bastard is also coming. I must beat him to a pulp. The Black Yak puffed out white smoke from his nostrils. After thinking about it, everything at the Vatican was the handiwork of this old knight. He had caused the deaths of so many kings, and almost caused the Black Yak to suffer a calamity. Can you beat him? Yellow Cattle's words caused him to lose his temper. Schiller was a peerless expert with 6 severed shackles. Only the Mastiff King would be able to contend against him. Even though the Black Yak had severed 5 shackles and was very powerful, he was still no match for him. The 6th shackle was extremely difficult to sever. All experts at this level were exceptionally powerful and aloof. One of them alone was enough to look down on all the kings. Chu Feng paid them no heed. He was adjusting his state, preparing to plant the seed and then evolve. "I want to do it in the Ox King Palace," Chu Feng said. The seed in the stone box was of great importance and must not be leaked. Even the kings of Mount Kunlun had to keep his secret. Otherwise, there would be a great calamity. It would lead to a rain of blood. Within the Ox King Palace, the roof of one of the great halls had been pierced through. The tiles had been torn off and starlight poured in. That was because According to previous experiences, the germination of the seed and the blossoming of the flower might be related to starlight, moonlight, or even the glow of dawn. Chu Feng took a deep breath and adjusted his body to its peak state. His whole body was sparkling and translucent. His blood energy was like a vast ocean lying dormant within his body. He was extremely powerful. A deep pit had been dug into the ground of the great hall, revealing a layer of soil. Chu Feng opened the bee-skin bag that was as tall as a man and poured all the red crystals into it. Scarlet light immediately blossomed in the area. The entire hall was illuminated by torrential scarlet radiance because the crystals were too brilliant. Looking from afar, it was as if there was a fire coming out from the roof, and it was a sea of red. The black yak stood guard outside the great hall, while the yellow cattle stood guard inside. They were protecting Chu Feng from outside disturbances. The two oxen were on standby. Chu Feng took out a stone box from his bosom. There were 3 seeds inside. 2 of them looked the same, shriveled, wrinkled, and lacking vitality. Only one was full of vitality. Moreover, this one was extremely special. It was entirely golden and shaped like a small sword. It was 1 inch long, and it felt extremely heavy in his hand, even heavier than normal metals. No one would believe that it was actually a seed if they said it out loud. Even Chu Feng was a little speechless. Every time this seed evolved, it would be different from the last time. However, he was still deeply surprised that it had turned into a sword. Can it be used as a flying sword? He had this thought many times, but he never dared to try it. He was afraid that the seed would shatter and destroy the rare treasure. Now, he was about to plant this seed and let it germinate again. If there were no accidents, it would grow smoothly, and the seed would probably transform again. This meant that the small sword would disappear and turn into another unknown form. Chu Feng was really curious and wanted to give it a try. Now that he had mastered spiritual martial arts, he was confident that he could control his strength well. Qi. Golden light flourished, and the entire palace was filled with sword qi. This seed was somewhat astonishing and was extremely suitable for the imperial sword technique. If he didn't already know that it was a seed, Chu Feng would have thought that it was just a sword embryo, just a very small one. Yellow Cattle was in the Ox King Palace. He felt that something was wrong and quickly came out. He just happened to see this scene and couldn't help but be astonished. Chu Feng controlled the sword. The inch-long golden seed made a chi-chi sound and emitted a powerful golden light. It was an unstoppable sharpness that could actually cut through the palace. Chu Feng was shocked. He felt that this small sword was too mysterious. How was this a seed? It was clearly a divine weapon. He had a feeling that this was even more suitable to control than the scarlet flying sword. It was a weapon prepared for spiritual martial arts. Yellow Cattle's eyes were also wide open. He stared at the seed and mumbled, "How is this possible?" Chi. Chu Feng took a risk and tried. The sword-shaped golden seed pierced through one of the pillars in the palace. One had to know that it belonged to the sect master of the Fine Iron Sect. There were dragons and phoenixes carved on it that supported the palace. However, the inch-long small sword actually pierced through and directly rushed out. It was extremely hard and sharp. With a swoosh, golden light flashed, and the small sword fell into Chu Feng's palm. Upon closer inspection, it was lustrous and lustrous without the slightest damage. This thing is extraordinary. Yellow Cattle rushed over with a solemn expression. He received it and carefully sized it up. "Do you know where it came from?" Chu Feng asked. "I've heard rumors of another weapon, but it doesn't belong to our world. Instead, it belongs to another terrifying world. Rumor has it that there is an ultimate weapon that grew out of a plant. It is enough to suppress and kill all enemies." Yellow Cattle's expression was solemn. According to what he said, that weapon was boundlessly terrifying and contained unfathomable power. It was the sect-guarding weapon of a certain holy land that had been passed down for hundreds of thousands of years. After all, that was not the world that Yellow Cattle came from. He had only heard of it and didn't know the specific details. Chu Feng and Yellow Cattle studied it together and found that this seed was suitable for spiritual arts. Every time he used it, his spiritual energy would be very comfortable and wouldn't be wasted. In the end, Chu Feng was a little reluctant to plant it. This handy weapon would definitely disappear if he planted it. Forget it, I'll just plant it. Chu Feng no longer hesitated. No external object was more important than his own strength. In the end, he still had to rely on himself. In any case, it's not an ultimate weapon. There's nothing to be regretful about. Who knows, it might evolve into something even more precious next time. Yellow Cattle said. Chu Feng buried the seed and the stone box together. The red crystal shone brightly and dyed the entire palace red like the sunset glow. What he needed to do next was to wait patiently. Yellow Cattle retreated. However, this time it took a long time. The seed didn't germinate even after an entire night. This made Chu Feng anxious and fearful. However, he could clearly see that the scarlet glow emitted by the red crystal was restrained and all of it was concentrated on the stone box. This meant that it was effective. The seed was absorbing the energy of the crystal. The black yak and yellow cattle had also come to watch. Just like Chu Feng, they were also very nervous and hoped that everything would go smoothly. The two oxen had obtained more benefits than Chu Feng at the Vatican. This time, they hoped that Chu Feng could evolve smoothly and sever another shackle in his body. Finally, when the sun rose and the morning glow blossomed, the seed began to transform. In reality, the morning glow didn't spill in because it was blocked by the wall. However, at this moment, a light sound came from the red crystal. A golden light blossomed and a tender bud grew out. It germinates at a specific time. It doesn't need starlight, moonlight, or the sun. Chu Feng suddenly understood. Chi! Suddenly, a sharp aura blossomed and a golden beam of light rushed out. The seed had indeed germinated within the pile of red crystals. Finally, a golden blade emerged. Is this still a plant? Chu Feng was astonished. This time was too odd. He saw it clearly and carefully. The tender bud was no different from the body of sword. It was incomparably sharp and glowed with golden light as it broke out of the ground just like that. The black yak and yellow cattle were alarmed. They ran over and clicked their tongues in wonder. Following which, the blade grew taller and began to grow, from 1 inch to 3 inches and then to 3 feet. It was simply the body of a peerlessly sharp sword. This sword was overflowing with light and vibrant colors. The hilt was the root connected to the root hairs. On top of it was a dazzling blade. Anyone who saw it would think that this was a divine weapon. Chu Feng tried it. He tore off a strand of hair and threw it onto the blade. He gently blew on it, and the strand of hair was immediately cut. What a good weapon. This was the first time the black yak had seen this seed germinate. It had actually grown into a sword embryo. Yellow cattle was also lost in thought. They couldn't see through it at all. Clang! The 3-foot blade emitted a vibrating sound as a number of branches sprouted from its 2 sides, following which the entire blade began to grow. 2 hours later, it had reached the height of a man. Its appearance was quite odd. Its trunk was golden and had finally taken on the appearance of a tree. However, the leaves on its branches had all transformed into the body of a sword. The small swords on the tree were all sparkling with dazzling golden light. Indistinctly, one after the other, sword chi flew out. It was a terrifying sight. This looks a bit like the sword tree of the sword palace of Mount Shu, the black yak exclaimed. However, he shook his head. It wasn't quite the same as the sword tree. After the opening of the sword palace, the 2 white cranes had obtained the inheritance. Apart from this, the most precious item was the sword tree. Its blooming flowers were shaped like swords and emitted metallic sounds. The sun had risen high in the sky, but the tree was still in the process of transformation. It had already grown to a height of 3 meters. The leaves on the tree were like the body of a sword. They gently swayed and emitted sonorous sounds suffused with sword chi. At this time, the outside world was in a state of turmoil. That was because both the East and the West were talking about peerless experts with 6 severed shackles gathering at Mount Kunlun. A great battle was about to unfold. The whole world was watching. It could be said that everyone was paying close attention to this first great battle between the East and the West. No one could guess which side would win. The atmosphere was very tense. Mount Kunlun was the focus of the whole world's attention. Everyone was waiting for the great battle to erupt. At the same time, other news was flying everywhere. For example, some people said that Chu Feng was still alive and was at Mount Kunlun. This caused great waves, but this kind of unsubstantiated news was quickly drowned out before the great battle. Many people didn't believe it at all. What a majestic mountain range. Just by standing nearby, I can feel a majestic aura that can swallow the world. As expected of Mount Kunlun. At this time, a middle-aged man with fair skin and a bald head like a monk was standing at the foot of Mount Kunlun. He was the ancient Indian yoga master Fanlin. The black dragon was also present, accompanying him personally. Not far away, an old man with golden eyes and hair walked over with vigorous energy. Every step he took would cause the earth to tremble. He was the Elder Lion King. This wasn't intentional. He really did possess that kind of terrifying power. He didn't restrain it at the moment and naturally released it. The home of myriad gods in the depths of Mount Kunlun belongs to us. We will become gods there. Another old man with golden hair and blue eyes walked over. He looked like an old gentleman, but he was actually the Vampire King. Behind them was a large group of experts gathered outside of Mount Kunlun, ready to attack at any moment. Schiller is here and is resting. We're just waiting for him. Then we can join hands and kill our way into Mount Kunlun. The great battle would erupt at any moment, within the mountains at the Ox King Palace. The golden tree had already grown to a height of 3 meters. After the bark split open, it looked like golden dragon scales were opening and closing. The entire tree was covered in sword-shaped leaves, emitting tens of thousands of sword radiance. At this time, the flower bud had finally sprouted. This was not only an opportunity for Chu Feng's evolution, but also a chance for the seed to evolve once again. And this time, the flower bud was somewhat special. Chapter 187. The 3-meter-tall golden tree clanked and clanked. Its leaves were filled with small golden swords that swayed even though there was no wind, producing a metallic sound as they collided. At the top of the golden tree, a tinderbud emerged. It was a flower bud that gradually grew larger. It looked like a precious bottle, sparkling, translucent, and extremely exquisite. No matter how one looked at it, it didn't look like a flower at all. It was more like an object. A bottle? Chu Feng was puzzled. He stared at it and pondered. This thing seemed to be extraordinary. The black yak opened his mouth in surprise. Wasn't it going to bloom? But this was a glowing, resplendent bottle. Yellow Cattle's expression changed. He was very sensitive to such things. In his previous world, flying swords were only conventional weapons. There were also mirrors, pagodas, and clocks. It would be extremely terrifying if it possessed divinity. Obviously, the precious bottle was also a mysterious and extraordinary weapon. Once refined, it would possess unimaginable power. It was even more terrifying than divine abilities. The bottle gradually grew from the size of finger to the size of a chicken's egg. It was sparkling and translucent, emitting a misty mist. It looked rather mysterious. Chu Feng stood under the tree and looked up. He was deeply puzzled. Could this be the seed's final form? Could it be that it would never transform again? When the bottle had grown to the size of a palm, a series of intricate patterns appeared on its surface. They were very fine and complicated, finally emitting a soft clang. In the end, the patterns began to split open. It's a flower. Chu Feng was astonished. The so-called patterns had divided the bottle into many petals, waiting to bloom. Not bad. He let out a long sigh. He was more willing for the seed to bloom and bear fruit. That way, he could evolve along with it. He didn't want it to transform into an object. The precious bottle was about to bloom. The red sun rose high in the sky. It was almost noon. Mount Kunlun was not peaceful today because a great battle could break out at any time. Schiller, Famlin, the elder Lion King, and the Black Dragon had all arrived outside of Mount Kunlun. No one knew when they would attack. The good news was that some of Kunlun's reinforcements had also arrived. Old Yak, where are you? You're all red at night. What's going on? Hey, why did you tear off a piece of the roof of your palace? A king-level entity had come to visit. The Black Yak hurriedly rushed out. This was a critical moment, and he couldn't let anyone barge in. Not long after, he dealt with the people who came and returned to the palace, just in time to see the flower bud ripening. A soft cracking sound came from the top of the golden tree. The petals on the vase were about to bloom, and the gap was getting bigger and bigger. It was noon, and the sun was blazing. This was the time of the day when the sun was the brightest, and it was at this time that the tree underwent an intense change. In an instant, the entire tree was as dazzling as the sun. Moreover, its color changed from golden yellow to three kinds of light: dark green, silver white, and gold. The three kinds of light intertwined and revolved around the tree. In the end, whether it was the leaves, the branches, or the roots, they were all the same. They were no longer of a single color. Yellow Cattle was stupefied. This was the first time he had seen such a transformation. The color was actually different. As for the Black Yak, he had long since become dumbfounded. A seed had grown into a tree overnight, and when it finally bloomed, its color had changed. This was truly miraculous. But at this time, their expressions also changed. That was because after the light rushed up, it was simply too dazzling. Above the Ox King Palace, the tricolored light was flickering. The three kinds of light intertwined and formed a multicolored pattern. The entire tree, including the flower bud, was like this. Pop! It was at this time that the flower bud began to bloom. The sound was crisp and clear, and the treasured vase seemed like it was about to disintegrate. It was completely cracked, and the gap extended all the way to the bottom of the vase. The Black Yak and Yellow Cattle retreated to the door to avoid arousing suspicion. They didn't want to divide Chu Feng's fortune. Clang, clang, clang. Suddenly, like the cry of a sword, all the petals suddenly bloomed and extended outwards. The three kinds of light intertwined, and it was extremely resplendent as it rushed up to the sky. It was beam after beam of sword radiance that illuminated the entire Ox King Palace. At this time, even Chu Feng was dumbfounded. After the petals unfolded, they were actually swords. They were very strange and were densely covered in striped patterns. It was extremely astonishing. Clang, clang, clang. Beam after beam of sword radiance rushed up to the sky. It was extremely dazzling. I've never seen such a strange flower before, the Black Yak mumbled from afar. Yellow Cattle also squinted his eyes and observed carefully. What he saw today was too strange. In the world he came from, this kind of mysterious mutant tree was also very rare. This kind of tree was usually controlled by the supreme orthodoxies that had been passed down for millions of years. Chu Feng stood under the tree and looked up. He felt deeply puzzled. Why didn't there be any pollen this time? Clang! All of a sudden, all the petals retracted and closed once again. They once again turned into the treasured vase. It was the size of a palm, and its whole body was brilliant, as if it was the carrier of the great Tao. Why did the petals close up again? The two oxen were stunned. Suddenly, a strange change occurred. The closed flower bud flowed with brilliant lights and vibrant colors. The mouth of the vase was filled with a mist that became thicker and thicker without dispersing. In the end, the mouth of the vase was like a small waterfall. The mist poured down in torrents and landed on Chu Feng's body. That was a mist formed from pollen, and it enveloped him. Chu Feng had long since torn his clothes and tossed them to one side. He bathed in the waterfall as the pollen mist spread on his body and seeped into his body. His mouth and nose were filled with the fragrance. It was so dense that it made him feel as if he had ascended to become an immortal. It was as if his feet were about to leave the ground as the fragrance penetrated deep into his spirit. What's going on? The Black Yak's eyes and mouth were wide open. He simply couldn't believe what he was seeing. I was still thinking of taking advantage of it. He mumbled. It would be a waste if any of the pollen were to scatter. He and yellow cattle were waiting here, ready to absorb the excess. Who would have thought that the mist would gather and not disperse? All the pores on Chu Feng's body opened up. He was circulating his breathing technique to absorb this mysterious yet astonishing pollen mist and began to evolve. This was a type of enjoyment. The fragrance entered his body, and wave after wave of heat spread out. It seeped into his internal organs and went deep into his bones, stimulating his blood vessels. He could feel that the mist formed by the pollen was extremely mysterious. It was as if it was born for the evolution of living things. After entering his body, it was immediately absorbed. Even his internal organs and bones couldn't stop it. The heat seeped into his bone marrow and was everywhere. It was as if he was bathing in a warm shed during the bitter winter. It was extremely comfortable. Chu Feng's area was hazy as he was surrounded by the pollen mist. It was hazy and indistinct. The mist was also of 3 colors and entangled with each other. It was enshrouded in a dense mist. The 2 oxen were dumbfounded. They had never seen such a flower before. The mouth of the precious bottle poured out pollen in torrents, and a glowing mist fell down like a miniature waterfall. Chu Feng circulated his breathing technique. His internal organs became extremely radiant. Soon after, the sound of thunder lingered around him. His internal organs were like small suns, emitting a blinding light. Moreover, his internal organs were vibrating, causing his blood to surge and circulate rapidly. This, combined with the rhythm of his flesh and blood, resonated throughout his body. This was the most intense evolution, following which all the bones in his body rang out as if they were being hammered. It was as if they were being struck by metal and stone. It was very splendid. His bones were spotlessly white like suet jade. Within his bone marrow, a resplendent light pervaded the air. All of his bone marrow's activity increased tenfold, hundredfold, and then it began to shake intensely. His bone marrow was producing blood to replace his old blood. The 2 oxen were shocked. Chu Feng's transformation was too intense. Every time he absorbed the light mist, a sticky substance would be expelled from his pores. His body was trembling. At the same time, it was accompanied by tainted blood. There was a layer of indescribable substance on his body, presumably the so-called impurities. It could be seen with the naked eye. This proved that his evolution was too rapid. Chu Feng's body swayed. He wasn't surprised because this wasn't the first time he had experienced this. He was already mentally prepared. I finally know why this brat could cook the Golden Lion King after severed 3 shackles. His evolution is so intense every time. It's impossible not to become strong. The Black Yak sighed. The Golden Lion King had severed 4 shackles and was known to be undefeated in the same realm. Rumor had it that even those who had severed 1 shackle more than him were no match for him. In the end, he suffered a crushing defeat in the hands of Chu Feng. Damn it, does it mean that I'm no longer his match after severed 4 shackles? The Black Yak muttered. At first, he was quite confident. After severed 5 shackles, he felt that apart from the Mastiff King and the Elder Lion King, he was unrivaled. But now, it seemed that Chu Feng would be quite terrifying and not necessarily weaker than him. The treasure bottle poured down in torrents. The waterfall shone resplendently and enveloped Chu Feng. It continuously seeped into his flesh, organs, and marrow, causing his entire body to glow. At this time, his body was trembling rhythmically. His organs were rumbling and becoming increasingly translucent, causing his blood to flow at a terrifying rate. His bone marrow was covered in a layer of dazzling luster. His flesh and blood seemed to be forged from divine gold. The sparkling luster contained strands of firm and immortal aura. Old Black, Little Yellow, why are you here? Did you find some hidden treasure? You have to think of your brothers. More guests had arrived outside the Ox King Palace, but were stopped by the Black Yak subordinates. Otherwise, they would have rushed in long ago. The 2 oxen's expressions changed as they rushed out together. We'll go and stop them. Brat Chu, be careful. The phenomenon here was too shocking. The Ox King Palace's roof had been torn open. It was once resplendent and overflowing with colorful lights, alarming the other king-level entities. Fortunately, it was noon and the sun was scorching hot. If it were night, it would have been even more eye-catching. Within the Ox King Palace, Chu Feng was secretly rejoicing. After the flower bloomed, the mist of light enveloped him and prevented the dense fragrance from escaping. Otherwise, he would have been discovered by now. However, this was also very dangerous. If those people were to charge in, the consequences would be unthinkable. Old Black, are you hiding something from us? This time, several king-level entities had arrived and were about to charge into the palace. They were deeply curious and wanted to know what was going on. My brother is in seclusion and must not be disturbed. When he awakens, I'll bring you in, the Black Yak said. He stood there with his arms outstretched, blocking everyone's way. He was surging with killing intent. Why do I feel that something's wrong? Let our brothers go in and take a look, someone said. Even the roof of the Ox King Palace had been torn open. Clearly, there was something wrong inside. Mountain Chicken, it's none of your business. Get away from me. This is my palace. Do you want to force your way in? The Black Yak roared. Yellow Cattle also stopped them, saying, Who dares to force their way in? Don't blame me for being impolite. They couldn't let these people in no matter what. At first, these people were only curious. Now that the two oxen were about to flip out, they didn't want to shed all pretense of cordiality. They all laughed it off and stood outside the palace, peeking in. Old Black, what's going on? At this time, a few other king-level entities were alarmed. They were already halfway up the mountain and were about to arrive. This made the two oxen anxious. If too many people came, they wouldn't be able to stop them even if they wanted to. Within the Ox King Palace, Chu Feng was breathing heavily, inhaling and exhaling the mist. His pores were also doing the same as he used all his might. He could already hear the voices outside. Finally, he took one last deep breath. All the mist disappeared and entered his body. The fragrance made him feel comfortable both physically and mentally. At the same time, the treasured vase opened once again. The petals unfurled and became extremely resplendent. Hey, Old Black, what treasures do you have in your palace? Don't worry, we brothers won't fight over them. We're just curious and want to go in and take a look. Someone shouted. That was because the Ox King Palace was once again glowing resplendently. The two oxen cursed inwardly. The king-level entities halfway up the mountain were about to arrive. If they really barged in, Chu Feng's secret would be exposed, and he would become the target of the various kings. Kacha, within the Ox King Palace, the petals began to wither after the extreme brilliance. Following that, a small protrusion appeared. It was sparkling and translucent, suffused with white mist. It had grown into a fruit and was in the process of evolving. What would it be this time? Chu Feng paid close attention to it. At this time, the king-level entities halfway up the mountain had arrived. There were familiar faces as well as unfamiliar ones. Ah, I heard those two oxen are good friends with Chu Feng. An unfamiliar king asked the person accompanying him with a smile. Yes, they're very close. That person nodded. Oh, I'm sure the two Ox Kings must be very sad. That Chu Feng was too high profile. I knew he wouldn't live long and would be killed in the West. This was already a foregone conclusion. That person smiled. The people beside him also revealed faint smiles. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.